عندما فكر شيخنا الفاضل في إطلاق مشروعه المتميز حلف الفضول، كانت مواد حلف الفضول تتنفس وتغرد في بيئة تحمل تقاليد القبائل، وتقاليد القبائل لها أعرافها وتقاليدها وأنظمتها وقوانينها التي ترتبط بالإنسانية. فقد نشأ حلف الفضول في تلك الأعراف والتقاليد القبلية، ولم يكن الدين والسياسة طرفاً فيها. والآن نجد أنفسنا في بحث عميق لتقويم القبلية الدينية في كل دين وداخل كل دين. ويبقى مهماً التشاور مع صانع السياسات لبناء ثقة راسخة تهيئ الأرضية المشتركة والصالحة لبناء عالم يمزج بين مشتركات القيم الدينية وما حققته الحضارات من إنجازات مدنية في مجالات حقوق الإنسان والحريات والتعايش والمواطنة المشتركة والتعددية وغيرها من القيم التي رسختها الأديان وحفظتها القيم الدينية وصاغتها الحضارة الإنسانية بمساراتها المتعددة، وذلك لمعالجة مواطن الخلل الذي أحدثه التطرف والتعصب والكراهية. وفي عصرنا الحاضر يظل التحدي للأفراد والقيادات والمؤسسات الدينية والمنظمات والهيئات الدولية كبيراً حول إمكانية إقناع صانع السياسات في المنظمات والهيئات الدولية وحكومات العالم لتبني القيم الدينية في مجالات صناعة السياسات في كل قضايا الشؤون الدولية، وخصوصاً مجالات علاقات الدين بقضايا الحريات وحقوق الإنسان والتعايش وبناء السلام ومكافحة التطرف والكراهية والإرهاب وصناعة الدمار. كما يظل السؤال الكبير مطروحاً بقوة، وتشكل الإجابة عنه تحدياً مهماً تواجهه مجتمعاتنا حالياً. كيف يمكن لنا ترسيخ حلف الفضول مع حكومات وأنظمة وشعوب تعيش تحديات التطرف والإرهاب باسم الدين والدين منها براء، وتطرف وإرهاب باسم السياسة والشعوبية، وتتداخل قضايا حقوق الإنسان والحريات الدينية والتعايش وقبول الآخر والمواطنة المشتركة مع سيطرة الفكر المتعلق بهذه القضايا وارتباطه بإنجازات الحضارة الغربية وما اختارته من فصل بين الدين والدولة وسيطرة الماديات على حركاته وسكناته وتحييد القيم الدينية واعتبارها غير مناسبة للوقاية من العثرات والمفاجآت ومكافحة الكراهية والتطرف، واعتبار القيم الدينية رصيد غير مفيد في معالجة ما حدث للعالم من مآسي لا يمكن تبريرها في عصر التفوقات الحضارية بجوانبها المختلفة. الأخوة والأخوات الكرام، تعلمون أن الحوار بين أتباع الأديان والثقافات أحد السبل المهمة لتحقيق التماسك الاجتماعي، وقد استنفر المركز العالمي للحوار، مركز الملك عبد الله بن عبد العزيز العالمي للحوار، جهوده وحث المنظمات الدولية وساعدها على إعداد استراتيجيات شاملة للحوار التي تدعم بدورها مهامها وعملها، مثل الاتحاد الأفريقي، منظمة اليونسكو، المنظمة الإسلامية للتربية والعلوم الثقافة، وبرنامج الأمم المتحدة، ومكتب الأمم المتحدة المعني بمنع الإبادة الجماعية والمسؤولية عن الحماية، وصندوق الأمم المتحدة للسكان. أستسمح مديرة الجلسة أن أتكلم بهدوء من أجل الترجمة. وإذا كان هناك عدد من المنظمات والهيئات الدولية التي تسعى لإدراج القيادات والمؤسسات الدينية والجهات الفاعلة في المشاورات التي تقود عمليات صنع السياسات، يأتي المركز العالمي للحوار أول منظمة دولية تعمل على تفعيل دور الأفراد والقيادات والمؤسسات الدينية لمساندة صانع السياسات في بناء السلام وتعزيز التعايش، بإزالة الفجوة بين القيادات والمؤسسات الدينية من ناحية وصانع السياسات من ناحية أخرى، خاصة في المنظمات الدولية عبر حلول مستدامة، نظراً لما تمتلكه القيادات والمؤسسات الدينية وصانع السياسات من أدوات وموارد مختلفة لمساندة كل الجهود. ويتحدوا في مسؤولياتهم تجاه الأهداف المشتركة ليكونوا أكثر فعالية في تحقيق الأهداف المرجوة معاً. فمنذ تأسيس المركز عام 2012 بدعوة كريمة بمبادرة كريمة ورعاية كريمة من المملكة العربية السعودية وبمشاركة جمهورية النمسا ومملكة أسبانيا والفاتيكان كعضو مؤسس مراقب، روعي في تشكيل مجلس إدارته توافر قيادات دينية متنوعة من المسلمين والمسيحيين واليهود والبوذيين والهندوس، حيث تشكل هذه القيادات رفيع المستوى قوة فاعلة لتعزيز ثقافة الحوار والتعاون لتحقيق الخير للإنسانية كافة. كما يقوم المركز بشكل أساسي من خلال العديد من البرامج والنشاطات في العالم على بناء السلام وتعزيز التعايش والحوار والتفاهم بين أتباع الأديان والثقافات واحترام التنوع والحفاظ على التماسك الاجتماعي وغيرها من القيم التي ننشرها في العالم عبر البرامج المتعددة في أوروبا وأفريقيا والعالم العربي وفي آسيا. ومن خلال تمكين ودعم منصات حوار محلية فاعلة يمكن لنا تعزيز التماسك والتعايش السلمي، وهناك كثير من الأسباب الوجيهة والرشيدة في هذا المجال، التي منها أن الحوار بين أتباع الأديان والثقافات أحد السبل التي تؤكد على النهج الشامل المستدام السلمي لإيجاد حلول دائمة للتحديات المشتركة. التعاون بين القيادات الدينية وصانع السياسات هو أمر أساسي، لأننا لا نستطيع تجاهل حقيقة أن 84% من البشر لديهم اعتقاد ديني، يؤمنون بمعتقد ديني، ويتزايد دور القيادات والمؤسسات الدينية حيث يثبت تأثيرهم على مجتمعاتهم على أنها تأثير له قيمته. تحالف القيادات الدينية وصانع السياسات يسهم في تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة في جدول أعمال الأمم المتحدة لعام 2030، ما يدعم جهودنا جميعاً ويزيد من قبول الشعوب ومضاعفة العمل نحو إيجاد وتنفيذ حلول مستدامة للسلام. تساهم برامج الحوار المشتركة في معالجة الارتكاب والخوف، كونهما نتائج طبيعية للعنف والتطرف والصراعات والحروب. من واقع تجاربنا وخبراتنا في المركز العالمي للحوار أستطيع التوكيد بيقين تام أن ثمة آخرين يلقون باللائمة دائماً على الدين، أي دين كان، وأي دين في كثير من الأحيان بوصفه المشكلة، بينما نراه نحن جزء من الحل وليس أساس المشكلة، ويمكننا هزيمة التطرف والكراهية ونتحد في إنسانيتنا إذا مارسنا حواراً شاملاً بين أتباع الأديان والثقافات بدون تمييز بين العرق أو الجنس أو اللغة أو الدين. من خلال الحوار بين أتباع الأديان يمكننا أن نساعد الناس على فهم أن الهوية الدينية تثري المجتمع. يمكننا دعم التماسك الاجتماعي من خلال مساعدة الناس على رفض الأحكام المسبقة والتمييز وتعزيز التعاون بين القيادات والمؤسسات الدينية وصانع السياسات. خطاب الكراهية يؤدي إلى ارتكاب جرائم متعمدة ضد أتباع الأديان المختلفة. العنف باسم الدين أمر لا يمكن تبريره، يتعارض مع الدين. العنف باسم الدين هو العنف ضد جميع الأديان. دعوني أعبر لكم عن امتناني وسروري جدا لرؤيتكم وللمشاركة مع هؤلاء القيادات التي تحضر هذا اللقاء وصانع السياسات ليضربوا لنا خير الأمثلة على أهمية توظيف القوة العالمية للحوار الذي يقدم لنا دائما حلول متجددة ومستدامة. وهنا نطرح بعض الأسئلة المهمة: كيف يمكن لنا التأكد من أن بلايين الناس يتغلبون على الجهل؟ كيف يمكن لنا أن نمنع الجهل من توليد المزيد من التطرف والكراهية وأن يجر الناس إلى الصراع ويدمر الوئام الاجتماعي؟ كيف يمكن لنا الهروب من سجن التطرف من خلال الحوار في عالم يسوده التعصب والجهل؟ وأجيب: ما زال التعلم من خلال الحوار أمراً يمكن تحقيقه إذا ما كانت هناك إرادة ودعم متوافرين للحوار والتفاهم والتعاون. ومن هذا المنبر أدعو جميع القيادات والمؤسسات الدينية وصانع السياسات لإقناع أتباعهم بالتغلب على اليأس والكراهية والتمييز وعدم المساواة، لأنه بالحوار يمكن رفع هذه المظالم. وهكذا تستطيع المنظمات الدولية العمل مع أتباع الأديان من أجل التضامن العالمي. دعونا نبني جسوراً من التفاهم والتعارف لما فيه خير البشرية. دعونا نعمل حتى نتمكن من العيش في عالم لا يحتاج فيه أحد إلى الخوف بسبب دينه، فالحوار يظل الطريق الأوفر حظاً نحو التضامن العالمي، ومساراً مهماً يخلق مساحة آمنة مشتركة وأساساً رشيداً للوسطية والعيش المشترك داخل المجتمعات المتنوعة. ولعل هذا هو السبب في أننا في مركز الحوار العالمي نعمل على توثيق شراكات العمل بين القيم الدينية وبين صانع السياسات. كم باقي من الوقت؟ 3 دقائق. ويلعبوا 3 دقائق لو سمحتي. نحن أقل من العدد المطلوب، عندنا بعض الوقت. ويلعب قادة مجتمع الإيمان والأديان دورا مهما في تشكيل قاعدة الرأي العام. لن أتطرق لكثير من الأمور في هذا المجال، فأنتم كلكم خبراء وتعرفون أهمية الحوار بين أتباع الأديان والثقافات، لكن اسمحوا لي أن أشير إلى أن المركز، أنا أتحدث باختصار عن مشاريع المركز والتي أقمناها كمثال على دور المنظمات الدولية في تعزيز التعاون الدولي وبناء السلام تحت مظلة المواطنة المشتركة، حيث توجت علاقات المركز المتنامية بين هيئات الأمم المتحدة عن تكوين المجلس الاستشاري لفرق العمل المشتركة الذي يتكون من أكثر من 50 مؤسسة عالمية من شركاء الأمم المتحدة العاملين في مجال القيم الدينية، حيث يتولى هذا المجلس تنظيم اجتماعات فرق العمل المشتركة بين الوكالات المعنية بالأديان التابعة للأمم المتحدة، الذي تشرفت برئاسته مع السيدة تارجا كانتلاكا رئيسة مجلس الإنماء الفنلندية. وأود أن أشير إلى بعض الأعمال التي أنجزها المركز، ومنها تأسيس منصات الحوار بين أتباع الأديان والثقافات في أفريقيا، وهذا يشمل مشروع بناء السلام إن شاء الله. خلاص. منصة الحوار بين المسلمين والبوذيين، وأول منصة عربية للحوار والتعاون بين المسلمين والمسيحيين، ودعم تأسيس المجلس الإسلامي اليهودي الأوروبي والمشاركة في تأسيسه، وغير ذلك من البرامج التي تستطيعون الاطلاع عليها من خلال زيارة موقع كيسيد على شبكة الإنترنت. ولا أملك إلا الاستسلام لأوامر مديرة هذه الجلسة التي كانت صارمة معي إلى حد ما. شكرا لكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for your kind cooperation, Your Excellency. I'm sure you'll have a little bit of time to come back for some examples, inshallah. It is now my pleasure and privilege to ask Kosho Niano, who is the president of Rishokoshe Kai, Japan. Your Excellency, would you like to? Thank you. You also have 15 minutes.
Good morning. I would like to first express my deepest gratitude to the organizer for giving me this opportunity of sharing Buddhist point of view to all the distinguished leaders. I'm from Rishokoshe Kai, a Japanese lay Buddhist organization. I am now serving as one of the 4 co-moderators of Regions for Peace, together with His Eminence Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayer, as well as one of the board members of KAICID. It owes to the fact that Rishokoshe Kai has been committing to the interreligious dialogue and cooperation activities for long years. At present, Regions for Peace has interreligious council bodies in 97 countries in the world and will convene its 10th World Assembly in Germany next year. My grandfather, Nikkyo Niwano, the founder of Rishokoshe Kai, is one of the founding members of Regions for Peace and the responsible leader of the First World Assembly in Kyoto. When Regions for Peace was founded, the world was facing the crisis of nuclear war under the Cold War, and the Vietnam War was evolving into a hopeless mess. In the religious world, the ecumenical movement which had started at the beginning of 20th century, was developed, and the Catholic Church announced the Declaration of Nostra Aetate, which first admitted the salvation and religious freedom of other religions at the Second Vatican Council in 1965. My grandfather was invited and attended the Second Vatican Council as only one Buddhist. He was touched by the words of Pope Paul VI, who said, "We will contact people of other religions in deep respect, love, and hope." He forwarded his step to the path of interreligious dialogue and cooperation with his firm determination. In line with these movements, the religious leaders of the United States, India, and Japan met, discussed, and agreed to take an initiative to act together. Thus, the joint endeavor was created. It later bore a fruit of founding Religions for Peace. What I particularly want to speak about today is that these founding members deeply felt the limit of the closed view on peace by engaging themselves in the international meetings and interactions through the movement of the interreligious cooperation. The religious leaders who were familiar with the peace in each individual or community by stressing the importance of inner peace became aware of the authentic role of holding responsibilities for the suffering of others through relooking at the history and opening their minds. Namely, they got to stand on the humankind and global viewpoints by changing their way of seeing the world. The following word in the declaration of the First World Assembly of Religions for Peace in Kyoto in 1970 clearly expressed such views. As men and women of religion, we confess in humility and penitence that we have very often betrayed our religious ideals and our commitment to peace. It is not religion that has failed the cause of peace, but religious people. This betrayal of religion can and must be corrected. However, the number of people who actually underwent such experiences in those days were very limited. Most of the believers or followers listened to what their leaders learned, and they could understand to some extent, but I wonder how much they could feel from the bottom of their hearts. In comparison with those days, the interactions of cultures, economics, and politics are becoming much easier nowadays due to the advancement of the information and communication technologies, as well as the development of the transportation means. As a result of the promotion of the globalization actively developed in a great scale, which goes beyond the geographical boundary and framework, such as countries and regions, many people often get to talk about the global viewpoint in a natural way. But I wonder how many people are regarding the suffering of others as their own and are feeling the bitterness of others. What we need to do is to open our minds, recognize again the history and the world, and have an experience of learning it by our body and mind. In Rishoko Seikai, we started the program of youthship in 1973. So far, about 450 young adults have visited the battle sites of the Second World War in the Philippines. This program was initiated by the pure desire of youth members with the aims of conserving consoling the dead souls of Japanese soldiers, as well as deepening the understanding and friendship with peoples who live in Asia, through which they foster and enhance the willingness and consciousness for the world peace. We Japanese people tend to see ourselves as victims by the fact that atomic bombs were dropped at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But what waited for the young members who visited the Philippines as peace messengers was the history of the offenders in the incident of Bataan Death March. In spite of the fact that it's already past 30 years since the last war, and youth members were born after the war, the citizens of Bataan kept a strong sense of abhorrence against the Japanese soldiers who repeatedly committed the cruel conducts, and citizens are abused and spat against the Japanese young visitors. The young adults who were quite shocked by this experience thought, it will not become an authentic consolation if we only do it for Japanese war dead. It is a way of life as Buddhists who shall also console for Filipino war victims and American captives who lost their lives and pray for the world peace. After going back to Japan, they started a fundraising activity. A year later, the building of a peace memorial was launched in Bataan. At the joint memorial service held by Japan, United States, and Philippines, the youth members of Rishokoseka repented by saying, "Please forgive the sins committed by Japanese." And the Filipino Catholic father responded by the words, saying, with the spirit of not hating person, but hating only the sin, "We will walk together hand in hand from now onward." We have been fostering our friendship for long years since that time. We call this memorial monument as Friendship Tower, and young adults of both countries are continuing intimate interactions with the player of peace and friendship. Even now, on the memorial holiday of the Bataan Day, a sketch showing the cruel deeds by the Japanese soldiers is performed. I watched the sketch when I visited the Friendship Tower. It was difficult and hurtful for Japanese people to watch such a painful sketch, and I actually felt I wanted to close my eyes. But I truly wish all my 4 children and many young adults will be hurt by watching this sketch, because I wanted them to be the authentic peace builders by knowing the weakness of the people who conduct violence, and by taking into hearts that we human beings have the same seed within ourselves. It is easy to regard ourselves being different from them with such views. I didn't do it. They were not authentic Japanese, or they are evil, but I'm different from them. But the mind saying it's nothing to do with myself is a cause which doesn't enable us to extinguish conflicts and wars in our world. Absoluteness doesn't exist in this world. Only one being, the original and ultimate life force which penetrates through or governs the universe, is absolute. We call this being an eternal Buddha in Buddhism, or Almighty God in an Abrahamic religion. There is no absolute being in the world. Everything is relative and changes and moves in the relationship. Therefore, we have to pursue harmony in which many people enjoy peace and happiness by understanding each other, being patient, and coinciding with each other. For this purpose, it is important to open our minds to the different beings from us, to have the courage to admit our own faults and mistakes, to go beyond the self-righteousness and not be afraid of encounters which transform ourselves in a similar way as young adults practiced who built the friendship tower. The true value of alliance of virtues exists in proving and devoting to the virtue of God we believe in. When Rishoko Sekai made an organization plan, my grandfather always said, we should not make a plan to develop our own organization. Make a plan to develop together with other religious organizations and other religions. Based on this spirit, we members of Rishoko Sekai are implementing various projects in such conflicting regions as Palestine, Syria, South Sudan, Malawi, Myanmar, and Cambodia, and so on, through the donation made by skipping meals a couple of times every month. We also award Niemann Peace Prize, more than 30 years, to an individual or a group who made an outstanding achievement for expanding the theory of and practicing interreligious dialogue and cooperation. This year's 35th awardee is the Aryan Foundation of Lebanon. All these activities are not only for supporting our fellow Buddhists, but also for all peoples in need. Although my power is small, I would like to do my utmost to help our Muslim friends and partners to bring about peace in Muslim societies. The larger the object of our actions becomes in such a way as from society to the humankind, the more time is required to realize salvation and peace. It surely is a mind-boggling work which cannot produce a visible effect tomorrow. Therefore, the religious people who believe in the eternity of God could address various issues and extend certain influences, I believe. Lastly, I would like to conclude my speech by sharing the words of my grandfather I always cherish. Isn't there a case in which we give up to save people as impossible, whereas we can do if we truly wish? We shall reflect ourselves on it. All religious people should awaken to standing up together for saving all sisters and brothers, as well as for the world peace. May God and Buddha give us courage, wisdom, and heart and mind harmony. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing so much wisdom. There are so many levels of leadership development, and we're going to look forward to having further discussions on maybe some practical examples that everyone of our speakers can share with us. It is now my pleasure to call upon Simona Cusciani, who's a political affairs officer at the Office of Genocide Prevention and the Responsibility to Protect United Nations. And I know and value the work that they have done and on their plan of actions, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from her about the progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Baroness, and thank you to everybody. It's an honor for me to be here today, and thank you to the organizer of this meeting, to His Eminence Sheikh bin Baya, to the government of the UAE, and to the team that put this meeting together. I've been asked today to speak about something that is very close to my heart, and is the link between global solidarity, the work of the international organizations, and religion. And since I work for the United Nations, I'll try to provide a perspective that it's the one of the United Nations into this specific topic. But before I get into the details of my position about this topic, I would like to tell you who I am. So Baroness has already said my name. My name is Simona. I come from Italy, but I'm based at the Office of the United Nations for the Prevention and Genocide and the Responsibility to Protect in New York City. Before joining this office, I worked in the United Nations peacekeeping missions in Africa for many years. I started in Burundi, and then I joined the mission in Sudan. So I've been in the United Nations. I've been around for a long time. So I joined the Office of the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide in 2008. And let me tell you just what we do. This office was created in 2004 by the latest Kofi Annan, our previous Secretary General, to make sure that what happened in Rwanda and in Srebrenica in 93 and 94 will never happen again. So in order to respect, to commit to the promise of never again, this office was put together. And what we do, we have an early warning mandate. We gather information on a daily basis on situations worldwide where there is a risk of violence, and then we make assessments whether this violence could lead to genocide, but also to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and ethnic cleansing. We report to the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, and through Guterres, we report to the Security Council. So our mandate is directly linked to the Security Council, and therefore we report normally on situations that affect peace and security worldwide. I underline here worldwide because we really have a global monitoring mandate. We look at situations in the entire world. Some have claimed that we only look at situations in Africa. No, it's not true. Mr. Dieng has recently published an op-ed, an article that was specifically on the rise of hate speech and hate crimes in Europe, actually in the Western world, due to the increase in populism and ultranationalist narrative. Just to give you a small example. So I will then dig into the issue of global solidarity. Global solidarity is something that is very important for the United Nations, but I think it's not only for the United Nations, it's for everybody. What is global solidarity? It's a complex concept, of course. It's based on three main elements. Every human being, first of all, is part of a society. Every society is part of a bigger whole, and the bigger whole is affected by cross-cutting issues which require global actions, like, for instance, human rights or the global warming. Those who don't believe in global solidarity would deny either one or more of these elements. And unfortunately, there are many of these people. What is clear is that global solidarity involves an ongoing relationship among human beings, among all of us, as well as a sense of responsibility. Since we are part of the same world, we are all members of the same human family, and we need to act to work together for the benefit of all. So I compare the concept of global solidarity to concentric circles or to a Russian doll where the whole of the doll is composed of smaller dolls. So this is so important to the United Nations that we have a special rapporteur that has been appointed by the Human Rights Council to report on advancement of global solidarity worldwide. And he has defined, he has given a definition of global solidarity, which he says it's a precondition to human dignity, the basis of all human rights, and a human-centered approach to development, and has a bridge building function across all divides and distinctions. It encompasses the values of social justice and equity, goodwill among peoples and nations, and the integrity of the international community, sovereignty and sovereign equality of all states, as well as friendly relations among them. So among selected issues that are at the core of advancing global solidarity, we have sustainable development, financing for development, and South-South cooperation. So this is what we would say is a secular kind of definition of global solidarity that in a nutshell includes a multi-layered approach to dealing with survival of the human race and to the peaceful coexistence of all human beings. But then, what is the link of global solidarity to religion? This is a question that I asked myself while I was preparing this presentation today. It's definitely, I thought about it, it's definitely not only a secular issue, because it's not distinct from what religion understands, or religions understand as global solidarity also. Because we know that, that the solidarity is at the center of the principles and doctrine of the majority, if not all, religions and belief. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I really believe that the majority of religiously inspired people believe that global solidarity involves working together for ending poverty, achieving shared prosperity and peace, protecting our planet, and fostering a life of dignity for every human being without discrimination. I found many definitions of solidarity that have been provided by very prominent religious leaders. I'll give you one here, which I like very much. This religious leader said, solidarity is not a feeling of vague compassion or shallow distress at the misfortunes of so many people, both near and far. On the contrary, it is a firm and persevering determination to commit oneself to the common good, to the good of all and each individual, because we are all really responsible for all. So I think I have no doubt that whatever we define like as in a secular way or religious way, global solidarity, it's very, very important. It's essential to reinforcing and expanding dignity for all human rights on this earth. And it's the glue that connects everybody in this room, you as religious leaders and actors, and the members of international organizations and NGOs. So we are all working for the same purpose. I really believe in this. And I was actually very happy to see during these 2 previous days that the the 5th Assembly of the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies has dedicated a panel to international law and treaties. I think that these international law and treaties are really belongs to the main tool that we all have to advance globally, global solidarities on our earth. I refer here in particular to international human rights and humanitarian law, because this is what I deal with on a daily basis. That's what I do. But of course, there are many more treaties and laws at the international level that are very helpful to advance global solidarity. And while I'm speaking here today, Mr. Dieng, you all heard him speaking on the 5th, in the evening of the 5th of December in this assembly. He's in New York. He's giving a speech to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Convention for the Prevention and the Prohibition of the Crime of Genocide. And we are also commemorating at the same time the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. No need to say that these treaties were introduced to combat the scourge of the Second World War and the humanity that was part of it, unfortunately. So I will now speak a little bit of the link of the work of the United Nations and religion to advance global solidarity, because this is what I do. We have heard about what other colleagues do, but I will focus on the link with the United Nations. You know that the United Nations system is a big system. Sometimes it's difficult to navigate it. It's complicated. There is the UN Secretariat for which I work, and then there is a group of United Nations programs, funds, and agencies. Each of these actors has a specific mandate to advance global solidarity worldwide. So we have those who work on prevention of conflict, we have those who work on peacekeeping, advancing the status of women, children's rights, humanitarian aid, for distribution, and so on. But this is also what religions, with religious leaders and institutions do. But for a long time, the United Nations, they believed that we are doing similar things, but we are working on parallel track, like the train tracks that never meet each other. This is because the United Nations, unfortunately, for a long time, thought that they are a secular entity, and they don't want to get into the complicated issues that religion is part of. Until very recently realized that this is not true. That religion, as many have said during this forum, can be part of the problems, like many other issues. 1 minute, okay. But that is also part of the solution. And that's where there has been a movement in the United Nations to include religious leaders and actors and institutions into the main issues to advance global solidarity worldwide, including peace and security. And that's why the SG of the United Nations has spoken very clearly many times on the importance of including religious leaders and actors. And that's why when he establishes a high-level panel on mediation, he included very prominent religious leaders that are now part of it. And that's why we also have the Interagency Task Force on Religion and Development that basically gathers most of the United Nations entities to include issues that are at the core also of religions to work together to advance human development. And that's why I will finish here. I just wanted to say my last word is going to be on what we are doing as an office to work very tightly with religious leaders and actors. We are focusing on engaging with religious leaders and actors, specifically on their role to prevent incitement to violence. And then for this purpose, we have drafted, with the help of religious leaders and actors, a document that is called the Plan of Action for Religious Leaders and Actors to Prevent Incitement to Violence. And this is, I would like to say that it's very important that the Forum for Promoting Peace has joined the Plan of Action and we signed an MOU with them to implement the Plan of Action on the field. And I think this is going to be also a very good way for the Forum for Promoting Peace to have an implementing mechanism that will bring the Marrakesh document and the Alliance of Virtue to the field to make sure that what we are speaking here in this room has really an impact on people's lives, that we can really work together to save life and on the dignity of every human being without discrimination. I will end here. If you have questions, come to me. I still have three plan of actions at disposal for those who want to read it. Yeah. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Simona Crisciani. It's very important work, and I think you're absolutely right to try and link what we have as our ambition to Plan of Action, because I think it's really important that everyone sign in, not just the UN bodies. We started very late, but I will just, we have just little time just to go around. First of all, with Your Excellencies, maybe just share one brief examples of how you're linking the ambition of this forum to, in practical way, how you're linking it within your organization. Maybe just share with us one wonderful examples of your work.
Okay. التجربة التي خضناها في قضية العلاقة بين دور الدين وصناعة السياسات أو القيم الدينية وصناعة السياسات. أنا حقيقة أود أن أشير إلى أننا شاركنا بفعالية في المساهمة مع سيمونا ومكتب الصديق أدم ديانغ في البلان اوف اكشن او الخطة الدولية لتفعيل دور القيادات الدينية في مكافحة الكراهية والتطرف أو خطاب الكراهية. لذلك أنا أدعو حقيقة الأخوة والأخوات الموجودين في هذه القاعة في أن تكون جميع أعمالنا عبارة عن مسارات نضع لها مسار النقاش والحوار والنتائج، ثم بعد ذلك الاتصال بالمنظمات والهيئات الدولية ومحاولة تفعيلها على نطاق واسع، لأننا لا نريد أن نتحدث لأنفسنا، إنما نريد أن نطبقها على أرض الواقع، ولدينا خبرات ممتازة. وأركز في هذا الخصوص على المنظمات الإسلامية وأيضا العاملين. أنا أرى معالي وزير الأوقاف لديه عمل مهم جدا، سماحة مفتي لبنان، مفتي مصر، الدكتور محمد السماك، وأسماء عديدة موجودة في هذه القاعة لها ثقل وكبير، خاصة أنا أتكلم عن المسلمين، لكن في الأديان الأخرى أيضا الأدوار مهمة. دعيني أختصر وأقول أن أيضا العمل المهم الذي يقوم به معالي الشيخ عبد الله بن بية في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة يمثل على أرض الواقع كيف أن هذه الأعمال التي تبنتها دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة وساهمت في صنع سياسات التسامح والقبول والتعددية وغيرها، ما نراه على أرض الإمارات العربية المتحدة هو نتيجة لما حصل من هذه المؤتمرات وتبناه صناع السياسات وطبقوه على أرض الواقع، وهناك أمثلة عديدة في كثير من البلدان والمنظمات. لذلك نرجو أن نسير هذا المسار الواضح المهم المفيد. شكرا. شكرا بارونا. I would like to thank you for all your work and moderating this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's my duty. Thank you very much. May I ask Kosho Niano in particular about some of the examples that you gave already, and I'm really delighted that you're following the wisdom of your grandfather as I am, and I think that it's really important for us to remember where the roots that we come from in seeking peace. So I wanted to understand a little bit practically more the work that you're doing, because it's all very well, all of us speaking here, we understand, and our ambition is for peace, and we've all arrived at a mature age when we can see through that. But the problem is much more outside, where it's beyond our reach. How do we connect our passion for justice and working together collaboratively to that generation where it seems to be beyond our reach? So maybe you could share with us an example of work that you're doing in Japan. You have a translator, I think, here. Thank you.
そうですね。とにかくこう例えば自分の得になることをから離れて、いつも誰か他の方のために動くということを私たちは中心にいつも活動させていただいています。それは他の宗教の方に対してもそうだし、自分の宗教の中でもそれは同じことで、そういう意味でこれまで長い間の諸宗教対話の経験の中で、教義についてはどうするのかとか、行動を一致させるのかとか、そういうさまざまな問題がありましたけど、今回のようにこの徳ということを中心に置いたアライアンスを作るというのは、私はとても素晴らしいことだと思って、これがまた続くように願っています。
For example, we always think very seriously not to seek self-benefit, but always to seek benefit for others, regardless of difference of religion or ethnicity. Therefore, being engaging in the interreligious dialogue and the cooperation for long years. And I think this sort of peace forum, we are focusing upon the alliance of virtues. I think this strengthening the alliance of virtues through this sort of very wonderful peace forum is very important. I am convinced that we shall continue this humble effort.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Finally, a brief question to Simona. First of all, I want to pay my own personal tribute to His Excellency Adam Dieng for his leadership. Of course, never again has meant continuously that we have now many global conflict where genocide is clearly taking place, and he's given clear paths of leadership. But what I wanted to ask you, and I was very fortunate being able to be a part of one of the discussions, developing your plan of action. Your ambition is to prevent, strengthen, and then build. And could you just say something about how you've involved all these different parts of the communities to try and get to a place where we can begin to build, solid leadership?
First of all, since you are giving me the floor again, it's very dangerous.
I shall duly remind you.
Yeah, you should, please do that. I would like to thank very much all those organizations that have supported the development of the plan of action, including KC Dialogue Center, since the beginning, has been believing in our project, but also the World Council of Churches and the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, plus all those who have come on board during the last 3 years of this process. And some of those people are also present here today, so I really would like to pay tribute to this, to them. But so what we have been doing, what we call the Fez process, because it all started in Fez, Morocco, is to bring together religious leaders and actors since 2015 and discuss with them what is the role that religious leaders and actors can have in the prevention of incitement to violence. Incitement to violence, it's a terrible thing that is leading people to commit violence that sometimes also becomes genocide and war crimes and crimes against humanity in many parts of the world. We have seen what happened in Myanmar, in Iraq, I mentioned Rwanda, Srebrenica, but this is going on every day. Every day it starts with small hate, what we call hate speech, hate crimes, and then it gets into something very, very dangerous and that we cannot control. And we have been doing this also. Why I'm saying always religious leaders and actors. I might sound boring, but because we realized that we had to also engage those that in every meeting we have a religious balance, a regional balance, but also a gender balance and a youth balance.
Thank you very, very much for that. That's really important point to note and end on, because I think that the work that your unit has done to make sure it's a very significantly representative, or as much as possible, of all the different actors and players who can change this society. I just want to say thank you very much to His Excellency Faisal bin Abdul Rahman, Kosho Niano, and Simona Cruciani for their dedication and their advancement of promoting peace and the ambition that lay behind this organization. And I want to say my salute to His Eminence Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya for his work and all the team that's made it possible for us to gather here today. And thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to the session led by the next one on women. And thank you very, very much for your patience and kindness. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Jummah Mubarak.
Thank you to Baroness Udine and your panelists for that session. We'll now move straight into the next session on women's leadership in building an inclusive society. So if I could invite the moderator and all the panelists to come to the stage and dive straight in.
We'll find out.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I come to you today not as a scholar, but as a woman of faith who guides conversations and enjoys helping people connect with each other. So in that spirit, I would like to first thank the forum, in particular its executive director, Zishan Zafar, for making the effort to include women in the conversation, highlight us as leaders, and for being our allies in the struggle for social justice. Since its founding, the Forum has been keenly aware of how the fates of our nations are tied together in this era of globalization. So how have women, women of faith in particular, led the fates of these nations? Against the backdrop of the UN Resolution 1325, which developed an implementation framework for including women in all levels of decision-making, what is the framework for women of faith. And within all the noble work being done to protect women and engage women, whether it's stopping trafficking or educating girls, how do we move from women being the objects of change to being the agents of change? How do we build on including women to empowering women's networks and institutions to be the ones making change? These are the questions our illustrious panel will seek to answer for you all today. So first, I will introduce Dr. Aisha Al-Alawiya. She is an inspiring leader and visionary we refer to as Sister Aisha, who has founded Women in Islam, Inc., to bring Muslim women's voices into community discussions, both local, domestic, and international. She is a leader on the international NGO scene, advocating for women's advancement at the UN, and on the board of directors of numerous organizations advancing women's justice issues overall, including Karama, a legal advocacy organization. We have next to her, Besa, is the only full-time female professor of faculty at Islamic Studies in Kosovo. She has written extensively on the intersection of religion, society, and gender. She builds and leads networks of women of faith across her country to create social change. Elwad Elman has in the last decade broken ground by running the Elman Research Center in Somalia. She founded the first rape crisis center in her country and is working on rehabilitating and reintegrating young people from groups who are leaving groups like Al-Shabaab and ISIS. She is also an advisor to the UN Secretary General on his peace-building efforts. And last but not least, Manal Omar, who after 20 years leading peace-building and peace-building issues at USIP, Oxfam, and World Bank, created Across Red Lines to focus on women's issues and their essential role in peace-building. She was also named the top 10 visionaries shaping Islam in America and is the author of Barefoot in Baghdad. I will start then from that end and work our way up. Manal, why is it nice to include women? Just move the mic to you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You clearly know me well, Naseera, by saying it's nice to include women, because my general line always is it's not nice, it's absolutely necessary. There's a very clear reason why in the Islamic tradition, every first was a woman. The first to enter Islam was Sayyidatna Khadija, was a woman. The first martyr in Islam, the first Sufi saint in Islam was Rabia al-Alwiya. The female feminine tradition has led the Islamic tradition since its inception. When you look at the Islamic tradition, it was very much a revolution for women, and it was given as a gift to the world. It is no coincidence that the Prophet ﷺ actually mentions women in the farewell speech, and it's not from a humanitarian perspective, it is from a strategic perspective. You will not have economic growth, you will not have stability, you will not have security, you will not have inclusion, you will not have pluralism if you do not have women. So it really is not a nice thing to do, it's absolutely necessary. So on behalf of all the active women, you're welcome. Our work has been a significant contribution, and I would just want to put it in perspective of numbers. 1 out of every 10 women walking on the earth is a Muslim woman. That's larger than the population of the US, Europe, and Russia combined. So think of what a powerful force that Muslim women can be, and particularly when you expand that circle to women of faith. Now, the challenge, unfortunately, is that often women of faith fall in between the cracks because we don't necessarily fall into the traditionally secular model. We don't often prescribe to what would be called, the feminist movement. And at the same time, within the Islamic or the religious institutions, it's often not the friendliest to women. So we tend to fall in between the cracks, and I think that what's happening at this day and age, and what will be demonstrated in this panel, is that women are no longer spending their energy elbowing their way to the table. I think that there's a new force where we'll be creating our own tables that are inclusive and an invitation. And the good news is we really want all of our men there. You know, when you come from a faith perspective, it's an integrated perspective. There is no binary of just the men and the women on two opposing sides. It's integrated towards really making change as humanity. So I really urge people to really think towards the integrated approach. When I think of my work, and I think about my work, whether it was in Yemen or Iraq, or looking at my work in northern Nigeria, if it was not for religious leaders, I look at the work when I was in countries like Libya. It was the religious scholars that really stood by the women, paving paths for participation. But I love...
And on that note, when we talk about your work in conflict regions in particular, you've mentioned in your writings that women are an early detector, a sign for the direction of a society.
Absolutely. I mean, women are the canaries in the mine. Oftentimes when you look at how women are treated in communities, and again, the statistics will actually demonstrate this, it's an indicator of where a country is going. By the time it hits the streets in terms of police and violence, it's often too late to be able to respond. So, women know their streets. They'll know when foreign fighters are on their streets way before any security institutions will. And of course, we have to be careful because we also don't want to operationalize or turn women, as you mentioned, into the objects of peace building. We're actually an inclusive part of it. But when I was in northern Nigeria, when I was in Gombe, I went to the Emir of Gombe and said, if your moral authority isn't pushing back on Boko Haram, there's no way that the international or the UN or even looking at the governors will not have the same moral authority that the Emir of Gombe may have in terms of pushing towards girls' education and girls' protection. So, it's absolutely essential, and again, it's something that I emphasize, is that for most of the women of faith practice, it's not an either or. It's not about replacing men. It's about finding that place side by side, particularly with our men within the faith community, to really be able to initiate positive and sustainable change.
And last question for you, Manal. We tend to think of these as issues only limited to Muslim majority societies. Where else are you seeing these warning signs right now in the West?
So in my own home country of the U.S., we absolutely see it. I mean, anytime you see a rise of, anti-women's speech, a rise of attack against journalism, militarization of police, securing the borders, these are all what we call early detection warning signs for conflict and the rise of authoritarian regimes. So, women are canaries globally, and there's no society that's insulated or protected when it becomes from violence. Again, I do want to point out that particularly we need strategies of engagement for women of faith, because as it stands now, women of faith do not have their own platform for engagement. We tend to either have to, again, elbow our way into our own religious institutions or consistently defend our faith within the secular institutions, which are both, I believe, depleting and not the best form of using our energy.
Thank you, Manal. Besa, let's jump to you next. In speaking of warning signs, can you tell us what happened in advance of the war in your country?
Yes, actually there have been, am I okay with that? Okay. Yes, the early signs, and she just reminded me all the tensions and the fear just at the eve of every war that we have had in Western Balkans, and we have had the most horrible ones. We have had more than 500,000 people who passed away just in 10 years, with 2 genocides that were confirmed also by the international tribunals. But before these wars started, there were women protesting, and there were women warning, and there were women across ethnic and religious lines who were getting together to try to prevent or to try to talk to someone to actually make it stop. What is very interesting is that there have been so many events organized spontaneously and really, organized in large masses, and they were led all by women because the repression just prior to the war for the countries, for the region of the countries that I come from, is that we have these police hours where men were not allowed to go out, but women were out, women were protesting, women were demonstrating. They were making these early warnings. They were even trying to show to the authorities and to regimes and to militaries that they are peaceful. Just to illustrate, we have a very, how to say, impressive and moving picture of our women, Albanian women, holding breads into their hands like this, just trying to move across to reach to the houses or to other neighborhoods. But what is really interesting, and it's really also somehow disappointing, is that how come the same early warnings are not, I have to say, noted or registers from the male side? Mm-hmm. I have to also emphasize the situation that when men were actually out in the war fighting or either, I don't know, organizing in the mountains, it were the women who were staying in the houses and protecting homes and children. But rape has been a massive, massive weapon of all wars in Balkans. And how come actually from that side nobody stood to protect or to prevent these massive and systematic rapes that were going on? So there is how to say, in terms of detecting, I think that that should be also something that we need to acknowledge in order to prevent future conflicts and in order to prevent these massive rapes, that if the woman knew that the war that is going to take place is going to be devastating, and first of all, devastating for women and children, but what happened during the war and after the war, unfortunately, there was not the same scale of solidarity or empathy for the woman who will be actually experiences what they have experienced.
And we were all horrified at the international community's lack of engagement and support writ large in that war. So then were women who are maintaining a lot of these connections in these communities, were they at least included then in the peace process to bring everything back together?
Oh, unfortunately not. You know how it is. It is the women who actually took on their shoulders all the burdens of survival and of healing and of rehabilitation. And they were actually, in the Western Balkans, if you talk about the grassroots activism, you talk about women activism, because it is the unpaid level, it is where the powers and resources are actually lacking, but the connections are strong across lines. They were unfortunately not included into these peace processes. And that's why, and all the accords, these agreements that were reached via international mediations, for instance, in Bosnia, it was a huge US mediation and support. Same in Kosovo, but in Kosovo now we have EU more involved and US left a bit step aside. But I believe that the reason why this transitional period in the Western Balkans, that these countries are not standing fully on their feet and that these agreements are not being fully functional, is because the women were not part of that. And that's why everyone now actually denounces the fact that these accords are dysfunctional. Why? Because they are not working in the society. And who works in the society? Why not include the lessons of formal and informal grassroots peace-building efforts into these agreements and negotiations, which, even though led at the political level, 99% are technical, are social, are economical, are administrational, and none of that is still not working in the Western Balkans, be that in Bosnia or particularly, I can speak of my country, Kosovo. So, and over again, we come to the same point, which is we need to sit down and negotiate. Okay, we need to sit down and negotiate the things that we have been negotiating for decades. And how come that I have to say, there is no frame that gets these lessons that the grassroots women and women peace builders actually has proved to be functional and successful at the society, bring them to the table. I think it was a matter of power, or there are many reasons that we can dwell on discussing that, but the lesson that should be there is that these peace processes should be inclusive, and that women, peace-building efforts, experiences, and lessons should be part of that, substantial part of these.
And so 20 years later, and last question for you before we move on, 20 years later, in the acknowledgement that these peace accords did not include women and weren't working. How is this new generation of women leaders that's followed dealing with this issue?
Oh, of course there is a frustration, especially among younger generation who are now, if they were born immediately after the war ended, they are now at their 20s. Of course, they make questions to the older generation of women as well about, let's say, not being more insisting on certain issues. But you know, some circumstances can fairly be judged, in my opinion, only in the times when they occurred. But nevertheless, now I believe that there are movements of young generations who would like to have and see these processes different from the ones we have had before. And this is very much important to mention the fact that the inclusivity of women and younger generations should be the feature of any current peace process, which unfortunately was not in the past. I mean, we all know the TV shows and the old people, the negotiators, with all due respect, who were sitting, and maybe you know they are the most famous people negotiating maybe even the Second World War conflicts and post-Second World War, and then you had them into the negotiating the conflicts of the 90s and now millennials. But you know, the situation are no longer the same. The needs of the society are different, and there is a very vibrant networks of youth and women who have their perspectives and needs and challenges to be addressed.
Thank you, Bessa.
Thank you.
Picking up that thread of this next generation and younger leadership, Elwad, in Somalia, 78% of the people are under the age of 30, and more than half of that are under the age of 15. So what does that require? What does that do for young women's leadership?
I would add to that as well, too, in addition to having such a stark and overwhelming majority of young people in the nation, the country has also been in war for 28 years. So this huge population of youth have only ever known conflict. So it's not only time for young people to be involved in these processes, but they have a moral obligation and responsibility to lead, and they want to lead. Young people are not waiting for permission the same way that I believe women no longer are waiting for permission or space. They're creating their own space. And I'm proud of the resolve of young people in Somalia to transition out of conflict, but stemming from the same kind of frustration that women leaders have had in Somalia, where space was not created for them, where culturally, structurally, religiously, they were systemically excluded. So now they're operating on these silos and creating their own spaces and not waiting for permission. There's examples of that in young people in political parties, in civil society organizations, young faith leaders in Somalia, and examples that are showing that they're creating their own frameworks now to lead in this space. But I think that it's not a question of should young people have a role to play in peace building. They already are taking that lead. And what I'm always struggling with is that when we talk about the Women, Peace and Security agenda, women usually means older, elite woman of influence that has now had this small framework of space to engage. And when we talk about youth, peace, and security agendas, that we have various resolutions that are now creating pathways and institutionalizing the role of young people, that usually means young, male, and elite. So what disappears in there is the unique plight and role of young women in these processes. We're often viewed as just victims or spoils of war, and rarely is our very unique ability to lead and influence our communities acknowledged. So as young women trying to support building inclusive spaces and creating peace in our communities, we have many challenges.
But is that just a modern issue in Somalia in terms of women's leadership and women creating spaces for themselves? Or are you yourself drawing on a deeper history that may not have been recognized of women's leadership?
We often hear that, women are the backbone of society, women are the earners. The role of women, and young women as well, has always been acknowledged. I don't think it's just because young women or women's leadership is on the social and political agenda right now globally that we're starting to see that there is pathways and opportunities for engagement. Historically, culturally, religiously, the role of women in their communities of influencing thought has always been at the forefronts, yet in practice, it hasn't really been facilitated.
Can you tell us a bit about the 12th tribe in Somalia?
The 6th clan. That's actually one of the... 6th clan. The 6th clan is also another example of how women are not waiting for an opportunity to lead and creating their own structures, but work with what exists in the country. So Somalia is a very tribal society. We have 5 major clans. And as a woman, you are never I think, good enough to serve or lead for either clan. You inherit your father's clan, but then you're still just a woman who can't take that full role. If you become married, then you are seen as, by extension, carrying out the values or the interest of your husband's clan. So women decided that they're going to create their own clan, the 6th clan, which is the women's clan. And it's going to be that supportive community for women in the absence of that existing in our traditional culture. And through that, women have demanded to be at the negotiating tables for conflict resolution. Through that, they have created a network of solidarity so that they are never diminished or not represented fully. And there are many examples like that. I'm inspired by the women that I work with every day in Somalia that have taken it upon themselves to police their communities, to work with security forces when that trust doesn't exist in the community, but have been incredibly tapped into the networks as you described and have been able to thwart the capacity of armed groups where others have failed.
Thank you so much, Alwad. Sister Aisha, we have heard about women as indicators of early warning signs. We have heard about women in peace and conflict and stability, women demanding and creating spaces for themselves. But we've heard about these in the context of more traditional conflict zones that are in the Middle East, in Caucasus. We don't think about that in terms of the United States. And I'd like to hear about your experience in the US civil rights movement as a woman of color, a black woman in particular. Did any of these lessons and experiences apply to you in that conflict era of American history?
Assalamu alaikum. First, I'd like to thank Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya for including me as one of the trustees of the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Society and creating a space for women's voices to be heard in addition to the other concerns that have been voiced here today. I'd also like to extend my gratitude to the government of the UAE for supporting this very important work, this global work, and it's not just focused on the Middle East. I carry all of these issues with me as an African-American Muslim woman and someone who really believes in the concept of the Ummah. I own all of the struggles that impact Muslims around the world, including in the United States. And when we talk about strife in that context of globalization, and certainly in forums like the United Nations, there's not an opportunity to really critique the things that happen in the United States. So we're still working on bringing that forward so that we can have a more holistic point of view in terms of oppression and how do we combat it and build the societies that we want our children to live in. So people who know me are familiar with my appeal to people that I talk with and sit with, that we know all of the things that we agree on, but we shy away from talking about those things that are really difficult for us to approach. And so I'd like to encourage us to be bold and take those steps to really begin to engage the crushing, the spirit-crushing issues in the world today that are really tearing us apart as a human family. And that is a very, very difficult road to take. But I think that if we are to be truthful and authentic and in integrity as we try to position ourselves as ethical people in the world, we must address those issues, those most difficult issues that we have to face, bring forward as a global human community, trying to live in dignity for everyone, that we cannot ignore those pressing issues. So yes, the civil rights movement, I think that it is a pillar, certainly in our society, and as we work around the world, we see that other people as well reference that work. It is by no means a done deal. We suffer regression, we get spurts forward, but we are also very much inspired, supported by our faith, and there's one issue that I'm constantly concerned about, is that as we move in, you know, we fly at this altitude, but when we do that, and that is a necessary path, we don't see what's on the ground. And I think that it's very critical that we find ways, create viable ways to have those conversations that we have at this level filter down to the grassroots, because the power is really in the people. And we say, you know, in the civil rights movement, that you cannot legislate morality, you know. The people have to own that for themselves. And you can only own that if you're dealing in earnest with justice. So there are many issues that we have to confront. My work, founder of a Muslim women's human rights organization, initially to educate ourselves as Muslim women about our faith, because in many instances we find that we've not had a clear pathway to learning the fundamentals of our faith, right? So to really get that foundational knowledge so that when we go out in the world to create change, we are prepared and expect pushback, because we are breaking the status quo of oppression. And it's a necessary step that we have to take. And again, as Manal said, that we're not looking to build coalitions or movements of just women. We need our men to stand up for us, to be with us in this struggle, to bring positive change for our societies, and indeed for the world that we're leaving, our children. So we have a lot of hard work to do, and I'm appreciative of this forum, listening and learning from everyone who has come. And I would like to challenge us to really be inspired and bold in our faith to tackle those issues that we shy away from, maybe in instances where we are really standing alone with very few allies. And I like to reference the issue when we advocate. My organization was founded in response to the rape atrocities in Bosnia at that time. And one of the issues that we encountered early on from women's movements was that if you are not, if you don't carry a certain label, and certainly there was no room for women who identified as religious leaders, there was not space for your voice. So without carrying a particular label other than a Muslim woman, we had to kind of force our way into environments whereby our position as Muslim women who believe, fight for, and struggle for the liberation of women. And when we talk about women's issues, we are talking about issues that impact the society, that impact our community. They are not just women's issues. And I also like to say in these audiences that often when you say Muslim women's panel, the men leave, you know, and it's like, no, or they begin to, you know, go into private conversations. But the men need to be a part of the women's conversation as well. Yeah. Because we need each other, and we love our men, and we know that our men love us. So we have to find ways to stand together and create the change, have the difficult conversations that are only going to make us stronger in the long run. One thing that I am careful of, though, is that as we, you know, we've tried everything. We've opened our toolbox and we've pulled out everything. You know, we pulled out everything. The women came, and now it's religion. So I'm cautioning us that we do not allow religion to become weaponized, yeah, so that we forget who we are as spiritual people, yeah. So there is so much that we have to do. And in this moment, Palestine is on my mind, because we are people who advocate for the rights of all people. We've stood with the apartheid South Africa. We stand with the Burmese people. Everyone. So why not the Palestinian people who are suffering with no voice? So I know that that's a very difficult challenge for us, but it's one that we must make in order to be authentic. Otherwise, when we go back to our communities, our constituencies see us as hypocritical, right? So it's very important that we are true to our values. And the verse in Quran that says, stand up firmly for justice, even if it's against yourself. Yeah.
Sister Aisha, one last question before we go to a broader discussion. You've mentioned a few times the difficult issues that we have that we don't address, and the need to be authentic. You did mention one of the key global policy challenges, Palestinian crisis. But in the spirit of intersectionality, we are women of color. Talk to us, talk to our audience a bit about the issue of racism in certain communities of faith.
It's another one of those elephants in the room. You know, Muslims like to say, well, Islam, you know, there's no racism in Islam, but we are very firmly convinced that this specter of racism feeds the ills that we are encountering now. We talk about Islamophobia and all of that. Well, the roots of that are really in racism. So it's in all of our societies. No one is exempt. No one is excused. No one escaped it. So it's, again, one of those issues that we must tackle, because it has no home among us as people of the Islamic faith. So if we don't do that, then we are leaving a part that will come back and really serve us no good as we build all of these grand edifices and monuments and structures and really constructive work. But when we leave out the vital elements that are feeding the negativity, the global negativity that we are constantly revisiting. Someone said we were always saying, never again, you know, and it's like, well, it's happening again, you know, and again. So it's up to us as people of faith to have it stopped and to pull out all of the stops and resources that we have. And we'll find that all of the bridges that we're trying to build with other people of faith, we will really gain more respect from these people because we are being genuine and we're being authentic and we're being true to our values as practiced Muslims.
I want to take that thread of justice, particularly legal systems that are designed to change these structural challenges we have, whether it's structural sexism or structural racism, and toss it out to all of our women to draw from each of your experiences of then what does justice look like, in particular for women of faith, in this modern context?
Yep. Okay. I'll jump in because a couple of things. One thing is it's actually really beautiful to kind of see what's happening in some ways because, part of love is accountability. And I think that traditionally, anthropologically, sociologically, women have always had that role of preserving kind of the integrity of communities. And I feel like just listening to all of the other women on the panel, and particularly Sister Aisha, that's kind of what's unfolding is this really powerful accountability for us as a community. And I hope that the masculine isn't so fragile that they can't rise to the occasion of being held accountable. So I want to kind of highlight that. And also, when you're looking at justice, I've been a peace negotiator. I've worked in several war zones in different contexts across the Middle East and Africa. I was in a lot of the squares during the Arab Spring and the transition from Yemen Square. I had the honor of being with Dr. Arif in Benghazi. And if I learned one lesson or two lessons in the 20 years of doing peace building work, was first and most importantly is it is preventable. I mean, it's unbelievably overwhelming how preventable all of this conflict is. And part of that is an acknowledgement, and this is going to be very hard for people to hear, and so please take it in the spirit of experience from the ground. There is a real tension between peace and justice. And oftentimes, justice will be wrapped up in a lot of trauma and a need and a call for revenge. It's not to say there isn't real, strong, legitimate grievances on the ground. But there is a point in time where you're going to have to look at that tension between peace and justice. And my experience is, in the heat of conflict, most people will choose justice over peace. And most people, and unfortunately, the way the international community and through its double standards, they have positioned peace as peaceful surrender. And so there's a real resistance and almost an allergy. I was surprised when I joined the U.S. Institute of Peace. I thought my colleagues from the humanitarian and the development world would resist the U.S. and USIP. It was actually the word peace that I got the most resistance from. And people saw it as a peaceful surrender, and they were demanding justice. So the conversation is a difficult conversation on the tension between peace and justice. I also want to offer something that took me 20 years to figure out, which is, and again, it's hard for people, particularly in our days of activism and demanding this social justice, to hear, is that, and this is where the faith approach is important, you cannot talk about external peace if you haven't dealt with your own internal peace. You have to look inward before you can go outward. And this was something, going back to what Sister Aisha said, in my own personal journey, I had to deal with the own masculine voice in my mind. Because in finding my voice in a man-dominated world, I lost my feminine voice. I lost my femininity, and it took me time to really rebalance. And remember, like, the world doesn't need more masculine energy, it needs feminine energy. And that was a huge shift for me. I also had to deal with my own inner racist and really look from my Arabic tradition, what have I inherited? And finally, one of the biggest challenges I did for myself was to actually go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington and to really spend a thoughtful time, not just kind of a walkthrough, reflecting on the link between the Holocaust and for my roots as a Palestinian. So, I really urge us, in kind of going in the spirit of Sister Aisha, who's always been a mentor and an inspiration for me, to offer a challenge to all of us not to only look at the external, but really deal with the especially for those of us who may come from roots of authoritarian regimes. It's passed genetically in neuroscience by 7 generations. So the trauma is in our DNA. Please don't overlook the internal before we go to the external. And then, and I really believe only then, can we have a healthy conversation about the link between peace and justice.
I'll do Besa and then Elwad and close off with Sister Aisha on this question, because Besa, justice isn't mean the same thing in the space that you're coming from in terms of legal justice.
Well, impunity is one of the, let's say, dominant phenomena in post-war society, especially in countries in transition, such as the countries of Western Balkan, where they were actually transitioning from a system, monotheist system, to a pluralistic system. And when you come to that, and when you talk about peace, and what do you give priority to, as our sister was saying, is that justice for women is not, unfortunately, on top of the agendas. Because when you talk about male, let's say, war as a male entrepreneurship somehow, where you will have huge contingents of war veterans, of war criminals, and who turned themselves into politicians, and then they capture the judiciary, then of course there will not be cases seeing justice, and more often than not, these are cases of injustices, discrimination, and violence against women. And this is one part of it that women in my society are struggling with, especially as part of the strategies behind this logic of systematic rape is the stigma. Now, not that they are not served justice, they are further stigmatized, and that kills. You know, it really kills these groups of women, and it kills the society entirely.
And it kills an internal part that also Manal
Of course. And secondly, I want also to draw to the valuable experience Sister Aisha has with Bosnia. You know, justice is... you in America, you talk about being some people more equal than the others. But in my society, I can talk about people being served justice and those served more justice. In the sense that being a society that has emerged from a system of atheism, where God was actually killed, was not present, and the reviving, let's say, these women who try to reconnect their legacy, their past, their centuries-old Muslims in the Western Balkans, and the women who work for the rights of all women. And we talk about justice here. For myself, as an activist like me, every time we are on this discourse, we are women who work for the rights of all women. But the women who are secular and work for the rights of all women, not necessarily they support the women of religions. And this is really, really an issue. And talking about this, on the other hand, at the grassroots level, it was the women of faith, the ones who were detecting, working on prevention, healing, reconciliation, memory. Memory is an important issue in my country. And it is only through the narrative of the faith that we actually, uplift the communities to that. There is no, let's say, state or secular narrative that actually does this job more efficiently than anything else. And going back again, I think missed part of the answer when you asked me about what have women learned from the war. Women, of course, they have emerged from a war with being more eye-opened, in the sense that you do not get, again, as easily brainwashed into a war rhetoric as we used to do before, that the war does not benefit anyone, and least women. So what is the practice of actually the activism of women in Balkans now is that they try to keep accountable each politician on even the hate speech that they try to actually put on public and penetrate, because the hatred is there, the legacy is still there, the wounds are still unhealed. So working on these matters in public discourse is very, very crucial. And I think also all of these, because this is really in a complex situation, a complex, I have to say, and a situation that requires complex interventions, all of this does help for a service for a justice to be served for everyone equally, for women as well, and for women of faith as well.
Ilwad, this has become a very personal experience for you, based on the work that you're doing directly with rape crisis victims, as well as young men recovering from being part of the extremist, the former soldiers. You are not the typical person that we think of as leading these efforts. So while Besa talked about on the more systems that needed to be changed locally, I'd love to hear more about your personal experience and your perhaps challenges and struggles in that space.
Sure. I mean, I don't know what the typical figure is to work in this kind of space, whether it's reintegration or human rights, but it is a question that I'm constantly confronted with when people realize the type of work I do. And my journey did start in Somalia. I was born there, and when the war worsened, my family fled. My mother and my father made the decision to split up. He would stay in Somalia to work with young people that were being co-opted by the warlords, to get them to drop their guns, to pick up pens, and he would open businesses and hire them as a means of leaving the conflict. And my mother would leave with my sisters and I for safety. It would be the last time they would see each other, as he was killed in Somalia for the work that he was doing. He was so effective in his ability to provide an alternative, dignified livelihood and safe measures for these young people that are being used by warlords that eventually he was killed for that work. So I grew up in Canada, but I have always identified as Somali. It's always been at the back of my head how great the work was that my father did, and how till this day he was considered the Somali father of peace, and a nagging responsibility that I couldn't just sit in Canada watching Somalia without even trying to exercise my role in the transition out of conflict. So when I was 19, I moved back to Somalia. And what I learned is the same recipe that he was applying in the 90s of providing another alternative to young people that are joining armed groups was still viable, and it still worked. And the conflict in Somalia has morphed, where he was dealing with young people joining warlords, where now I went to a society that was dealing with young people that are being recruited by armed groups like Al-Shabaab, and later had splinter factions like ISIS. But it's all the same. It's still investing in people and giving the people an opportunity. And I'm reminded by the question now that you asked about the link between peace and justice. What we found in research that we did in Somalia and 6 other countries in Africa with disengaged combatants that are in prisons and rehabilitation facilities is that it wasn't necessarily ideology for the most part why they joined, but it was impunity, lack of justice, government inaction, or action that is too securitized. So knowing this, an overwhelming 71% actually said that was the final tipping point for them to pick up a weapon. Knowing this actually gives us an entry point of how to build more peaceful, just, and safer societies, and not just looking at narratives that are not true to the grassroots concerns as the entry point. So my journey is unique, but also not that unique. I think we live in a world right now where there's a huge population of people that are displaced because their homes were too conflict-ridden. They were forced to leave and are now interested in coming back and trying to rebuild their home. So I'm never offended when people say that I don't look like the traditional woman leader in peace and security in this sector. In fact, I think it's what we will see much more of now as more young people reclaim their agency and stop waiting for permission to lead.
Thank you. Well, clearly we do not have enough time to answer the 3 key questions I posed, and they're not answerable in one panel session. So I would like to, before we introduce our next segment, leave it to you, Sister Aisha, as the Dean of our delegation of women to the forum, to give us the closing thoughts. Wrap it all up for us, please.
Well, again, I want to thank Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya for rekindling the fire, the spirit of Islam, and how it is for all people and for all times, and that the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies is not just for Muslim societies, but it's global. And we're working to make it even more so, yes. So again, I'm honored to be a part of this work, and I'm thankful to Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya's leadership, and also again, thankful to the government of the UAE for their support. And I'd like to say that we have a long road ahead of us, and it's often a difficult road, but it's a road worth traveling. And I think that if we can extract ourselves from the binaries that pit us against each other, male, female, but acknowledge the unique roles and the power that each of us brings to building the society that we want to live in, then we would be well served, not only for our own selves, our own generation, but for our children's generation and generations to come. The First Nation people talk about building work 7 generations ahead, so we're just not looking for ourselves and our immediate families and our immediate time, but we're looking down the road generations so that our children can benefit from the good seeds that we plant, inshallah. So again, I want to ask a heartfelt ask to the brothers in our community, and certainly those brothers who are here, to embrace us, you know, to back us, you know, to be with us, because women are not going to go away. And the more strong Muslim women get in who they are, what this religion has given us, how it has honored us and empowered us, and we build on the sunnah of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, really, the world is really ours to bring forth these gifts that I frankly feel that we've been very selfish in terms of just keeping the goodies to ourselves. But it's time now to get out into the world and really spread the beauty of Islam also, and the incredible expertise and gifts that we have to help solve some of the world's problems. And also I want to say that we don't have to be just talking about Muslims all the time. As global people, we have to address the ills of the world. So I think that with the platform that we're given here, and when we go back home to our communities, that we need to find ways to amplify what it is that we do here. I would like to see some kind of formal mechanism that would engage elders as mentors to our societies. One thing that I really like that I heard several years ago, that the Japanese had created this status of their elders as national treasures. And that, I really like that, you know. So hopefully we can find ways, strategies, you know, to capitalize on the wisdom and the experience of our elders, and at the same time acknowledge the incredible gifts that younger generations are bringing to this work. And combined, I think that we can do anything, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Sister Aisha, I would like actually all of our women to stay for just one more moment. And Sister Aisha, in that spirit of passing on your wisdom, and as the Dean of our delegation of women here, I would like you to join me in welcoming to stage Sarah Khan, who is the UK's commissioner. You all heard from her yesterday. She's a lead commissioner for the UK's Counter-Extremism Commission. She and I are indeed two different people. We are not twins. But Sarah, if you could please come to stage, because we would like to honor you, and Dr. Aisha will join in honoring you for all of the hard work that you have done as a woman in public life. We all know that Muslim women in particular in public life have a very challenging experience. And so on behalf of the forum, on behalf of Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya, we would like Sister Aisha to present Sister Sarah Khan with an award.
Oh, take photos together first.
Okay,
yeah, take a photo together.
Let's do all the women together photos. And now we'd like to hear, Sarah, from you again in a slightly different context than you were speaking earlier to this assembly. Please.
Thank you. I'm genuinely touched and honored to be receiving this beautiful gift and to be receiving it after such an incredible panel that we've just heard. I mean, I pay tribute to these inspirational, courageous, brave women, so I think we should give them another round of applause as well. I have to leave soon to catch a flight, so I don't want to spend too long now, but I just want to pay tribute to Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya and the work of the Forum for Peace. I've been attending their conferences for the last couple of years, and the work that they do now is so critical, it's so important, it's so valuable, and we are living at a time now of growing division, growing polarization, growing hatred of all kinds, and rising extremism, and we all have a role to play. And so I want to thank the Forum, and I know how hard the entire team work, and I know many of them who work incredibly hard, and I think we should also give them a round of applause for all the hard work that they do. But just to say, I just want to very briefly say that the work that I do in London is about challenging all forms of hatred. You know, we can't say we only want to challenge Islamophobia, but we don't want to challenge anti-Semitism, or we're not going to challenge hatred that is leveled at Ahmadiyya Muslims, for example, or people who say we're not going to challenge all other forms of hatred, including sexism or homophobia. It's important that if we are wanting to challenge hatred, we have to, as Muslims, as faith leaders, that we challenge all forms of hatred, because we will never achieve peace or justice if we don't acknowledge and recognize the dignity of each and every human being. So thank you all for all of the work that you're doing, and thank you for this incredibly generous gift and recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and we are now ready to move into our break.
Thank you to that panel, and thank you, Sarah Khan. We're not going, please don't leave the room, we're not going straight into a break. We're going straight into the next session, moderated by Dr. Mohammed Sanusi, on how the Alliance of Virtues, implementation mechanisms for the Alliance of Virtues. Now.
All right, Assalamu alaikum. So it seems that there is no break, so we're gonna get into the session immediately. So please take your seats. We're gonna have a short dialogue before you go to lunch. يعني نحاول أن يكون هذه الحصة القادمة يعني قصيرة بحيث أنه نترك لكم مجال أوسع للغداء، فنرجو أن تأخذوا مقاعدكم.
Please take your seats. We're going to start this session now. Please take your seats. Yeah, no, they're coming back. I haven't seen her. Oh, here's her cancer. That's good. Please take your seats.
Please take your seats. We are going to begin the session. I know that it has been a long morning, but we're gonna have a dialogue that will help to engage all of you before we go to lunch. So I want to begin by Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. We are so delighted to have you here again. My name is Muhammad Al-Sanusi. I am the member of the Board of Trustees for the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies, and also the Executive Director for the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. This particular session is really look into what kind of mechanisms, how we can make our alliance, our collaboration, our interreligious understanding and partnership operational. How we can come up with a practical initiatives and projects that help to advance the common good. So we have an impressive panel for you this late morning, and I'm not going to go through their bios, so you can look into that in the program book. But I'm going to make a short introduction to each one of the panel here, and then we'll give them the opportunity asking them questions to answer, and we have a dialogue, and I hope to give you an opportunity as well to engage in this dialogue. So in my immediate left is Catherine Laurie. Catherine is currently serving as an executive to ecumenical and interreligious relations for the ELCA. ELCA is a stand for Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and she's based in Chicago. But Catherine also served as the president of the National Council of Churches, which is the largest and the biggest Protestant umbrella organization for about 50 million members and 35 denominations in the United States. And next to Catherine is my good friend, Professor Robert Sellers. Professor Sellers currently serves as the chairman of the board for the World Parliament, the Parliament of the World Religion, the oldest interreligious and interfaith organization in the world. Professor Sellers is a scholar of theology and culture, as well as before that also he served in the committee for the Baptist-Muslim relations. So in the Baptist Church, Professor Sellers is known to advance interreligious relationship as well. And also, we served together over a decade ago in the National Council of Churches, Christian-Muslim Roundtable. You remember that, right? So, and next to Professor Robert Sellers, our Sheikh, he really doesn't need any introduction here, but Sheikh Hamza Yusuf is well known, the top Muslim scholars in the United States and perhaps in the West and in the Muslim world is well known as well. He's a student of Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya and the most knowledgeable person that I know of the Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya's, basically manhaj, or how Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya wanted really to help advance Islam. So Sheikh Hamza well known to that, and he is also the vice president for the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies and the president of the Zaytuna College. Is the only accredited college, Islamic college in the United States. So next to Sheikh Hamza is Yenna Wahid. Yenna Wahid, she is the daughter of the late president of Indonesia, President Wahid. Yenna currently serves as the director of the Wahid Institution. And of course, she also graduated from the Harvard University master's degree, as well as she contributed quite a bit in advancing interreligious dialogue and understanding. So this is really a brief introduction about the panel that we have this late morning, but we want to engage in this dialogue. Catherine, I want to begin with you. You have been working in this area. You have been following the development of the Forum for Promoting Peace, from the Marrakesh Declaration to the Alliance of Virtue conference in Washington, and you have seen it all. I want to really ask you how you see practical, operational aspects from your own experience in the Evangelical Lutheran Church and the National Council of Churches. What works and what doesn't work?
Thank you, Dr. Sanusi. Let me begin with a word of thanks expressed by many to His Eminence Sheikh bin Bayya, to the Forum, but also to Dr. El-Sanusi, who is not only our moderator, but an esteemed colleague and someone that we deeply treasure in the interreligious work in the United States context. I'm really delighted to be here and to have this opportunity to share with you some of our learnings from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I want to go back to 1984, when the Lutheran World Federation, which is the global body in which the ELCA participates, adopted a statement to our Jewish partners repudiating Luther's anti-Judaic diatribes. The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America was formed in 1988 by merger of a few Lutheran traditions in the United States context, and shortly thereafter, in 1994, we adopted our own declaration to the Jewish community. This served to not only repudiate Luther's anti-Judaic diatribes, which have been lifted up and appropriated through the terrors of the Holocaust, but it also sought to take that initial step of reaching out in right relationship to our Jewish neighbors. And I mention this because it has become the basis for what has emboldened us as a church to address all matters of religious bigotry, to stand in solidarity with our neighbors, and to speak against the distortion of any religious tradition. In recent years, this has taken an active form in addressing anti-Muslim bigotry in the United States context. We have done this as the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America in some specific ways, which I'll share, but also in some significant ecumenical ways through dialogue convened by the National Council of Churches, as has been mentioned, and through the shoulder-to-shoulder interreligious coalition to end anti-Muslim bigotry, which Dr. El-Sanusi and others were instrumental in founding. But to back up to our commitments as ELCA, we have a very particular methodological framework that we've been using, and it's multi-pronged, which I think is significant for the conversation we want to have about the mechanisms and theoretical framework for a new alliance. The first prong of our framework is that we educate our own church members about Islam, about both our commonalities as well as our differences. And as we know, in this work of learning about another religious tradition, more often than not, we learn more deeply about our own. And so that mutuality is important. The second prong has been building relationships with Muslims in order to offer opportunities for significant encounter, exchange, and in some cases, community service as well. Then thirdly, on the basis of those relationships and on the basis of our Lutheran vocation and Christian identity, to speak out against anti-Muslim bigotry and Islamophobia in strong and public ways, and even at times at great risk. This has also led us to the final prong of forming or joining existing coalitions with Muslims and other religious partners to address the greatest issues in our common life together. This methodological framework that I've briefly described functions from the top down, from the bottom up, and from all sides. So when, for example, our presiding Bishop Elizabeth Eaton speaks out, or perhaps our synodical bishops, we may experience pushback within the ELCA, but we also have experienced that this may provide encouragement and, quite frankly, in some cases, cover to other leaders within our church who want to join this movement. At our church-wide assembly in 2016, which was a critical moment in our common public life, our church adopted a particular resolution called Our Muslim Neighbor, and it called for 3 very specific kinds of actions. The first was that we commended across the church a number of educational resources on Christian-Muslim relations to be used and to be uplifted. We encouraged our members to commit ourselves to opposing, preventing, and yes, even eliminating Islamophobia. And we encouraged all of our people to engage in dialogue, friendship, and cooperative efforts with our Muslim neighbors. This is now a formal mandate of our church. I think it was quite surprising that this was able to be adopted by the church, but it's really enabled us to deepen and expand our efforts. The last thing I want to say about this framework is that we heard Pastor Roberts last evening reference the Pew Forum report that talked about the way in which religious bodies in the United States propagate Islamophobia even within their own traditions. And we, as the ELCA, as part of the mainline Protestant family, have not been outside of that. There is Islamophobia within our church as well. So our task has been both an internal task as well as an external task. And I'm pleased to say that through all of these efforts, we might even claim some success. Over the course of the years from 2014 to 2017, that study tracked that the temperature has been warmed amongst the mainline Protestants in the United States toward their Muslim neighbors. Now, to be clear, we started barely above the evangelical Christians at 62 degrees. And we have warmed a few degrees to, I think, 65 or 66. So we have a long way to go. Right. But I think we can claim some success, and I would attribute that to a multi-pronged strategy to have many trains on the same track at the same time, trying to move the work forward internally and externally.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is really the experience of the ELCA in institutionalizing this within the church. Right. It's something that is sustainable, I believe. Yeah. Wonderful. Robert, I want to turn it to you and asking you also your experience. You lead one of the largest, or maybe the biggest interreligious movement in the world. That's the Parliament of the World Religion. And I understand that you just concluded a successful convention assembly in Toronto with 7,000 interreligious leaders were there?
8,400.
8,000 from around the world. Represent about 200 plus religious communities.
About 200 religious communities from 81 countries. So it was a wonderful opportunity to be with people from around the world.
I see.
And to sit down and talk together.
So this mechanism that coming out of the assembly, they are practical examples that you can tell us to basically impact grassroots.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to begin, just give a little background about the Parliament. You've referenced its age. It began in 1893 as a part of the Chicago Exposition and has continued in the modern era in Chicago in 1993, in Cape Town, South Africa in 1999, Barcelona, Spain in 2004, Melbourne, Australia in 2009, Salt Lake City, Utah in the United States in 2015, and we just completed the gathering in Toronto, Canada, just a few weeks ago. This is one of the best known features of the Parliament as an organization are these periodic, very large convenings when thousands of people representing hundreds of traditions can come together for education, for inspiration, for motivation to return to their communities, to their churches, synagogues, mosques, gurdwaras, and other houses of worship, and to their schools and offices, and begin to share the message that they have heard and been inspired to communicate while they've been together with others. But there are some very practical and simple things that I think would help us in the Alliance of Virtues to actualize the vision that we have for creating a more peaceful world. These are simple techniques that have grown somewhat out of the Parliament, but has been a part of my experience as well, living in Indonesia for 25 years. And so I'm pleased to be on the panel with you, and we need to talk about that. But the first thing I would say is a very basic and important thing that we could do would be to provide opportunities and to really intentionally set up ways that people who are different can learn to become friends, can build relationships. This is very important. It's already been referenced from this platform a number of times that we learn so much more about ourselves and about our own faith traditions when we are with people who are different than ourselves. And that's certainly been my experience working with a board of about 30 trustees from many different religious traditions. And so my life has been enriched, and I have learned to be a better Christian and a better person because of my friendships with others. And let me just give a few examples. From my Hindu friend, trustee Kusumita, because of her devotion to her spiritual master, Sri Chinmoy, I have learned that I need to be more attentive to my commitment to my own master, who is Jesus. From my trustee pagan friend Andres, I have learned a commitment to the earth. And Andres talks so much about the earth as our mother and how we owe our allegiance and our protection for the good earth. From my Jain friend Manohar, I have learned something about this gratitude that exhibits itself in the langar meal and a generosity of spirit to reach out and help others. From my Sikh friend, I have learned so much about dedication to his way of life. And so on and on I could go with illustrations. And this has come about because we're not only thrown together on a board of trustees, but because we have built friendships. And I think the first thing that we need to do as a mechanism for actualizing our intent to bring about peace in the world is to try in all the places where we live intentionally to make opportunities for people to become friends with those who are different. The second thing that I think is so important is to move beyond just friendship and dialogue to cooperation on worthy projects. When I was in Indonesia recently, I was in Yogyakarta, and there is a wonderful peace institute at Duta Wacana University in Yogyakarta. And for years, the leaders of this institute have been trying to talk with the rural Javanese in central Java, majority Muslim villagers and some Christian villagers, that Christians and Muslims in rural central Java could get along together and should be friends and neighbors. Then, because Indonesia lies along the Ring of Fire, and there are volcanoes and earthquakes that so often strike this region, just before we had come, there had been another major earthquake that struck central Java, and so many villages were destroyed and houses were torn down and families were uprooted. And so the leaders of the Peace Institute had a plan. They hired 100 Muslim carpenters and 100 Christian carpenters, and they put them together on teams of 4, 2 Christians and 2 Muslim carpenters, and sent them out into villages all over central Java to rebuild houses and rebuild families' lives. And they reported to us and our team that they did not have to talk about peacemaking or living together as neighbors because the rural Javanese were so startled that Christians and Muslims could work together to help rebuild their lives.
This is an actual practical example of
practical
an act of
example.
virtue.
We have to cooperate on actions of goodwill and on things that we can do together.
I see, yeah.
And then the third thing, and I'll conclude with this, is that we should be ready to defend one another. And we've heard so many stories of how people have come to the defense of others. I have stories about Muslims defending Jews or defending Christians, but let me give one personal example from a friend of mine, Imam Imad Inchazi from Oklahoma City.
Right.
And right after 9/11, Imam Imad had gone to the mosque for morning prayers, and he thought he saw inside the glass front door of the mosque a bomb. And he cautiously approached and realized then that it was not a bomb at all. It was a reflection of the aluminum foil around the base of a flower arrangement. And when he looked at it, it was from Christians in Oklahoma City who had sent their good wishes to the members of his community to say, "We are standing with you." And then he said over the next weeks, so many of these people came and participated in the activities of the mosque. They took the sisters from the mosque who were frightened to the grocery store, to the doctor around so they would not be alone and feel vulnerable. They did all kinds of things with the children who were in the school. And so Imad Inchasi said, we were struck by the way that they came to our defense. Now, we know many examples of this around the world, but one of the things we could do would be to, in our own places where we live, be sure that we are tracking evidences of hate speech and violence and attacks against people of faith, and then we could mobilize people of good faith from all of our traditions to go in and defend them and to stand with them and to express solidarity.
In solidarity.
This is so important.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. I love the practical example that you gave and touching the grassroots as well. Sheikh Hamza, I want to turn it to you, Sheikh Hamza. This idea of the alliance of virtue has a historical context to it. So when Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya thought about this, he's keeping in mind history even before Islam. And the alliance of virtue was created for a specific purpose, historically speaking. So if you can shed some light about these successful historical examples of the alliance that Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya and yourself trying to revive to address problems that we face today.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, first of all, I think it's important to remember that history, when we look at history, it tends to be a history of the worst aspects of humanity. A lot of history is a history of wars, a history of trials and tribulations. Calamities were often how people marked events, like the year the dam burst. You know, they say if a million airplanes land safely, no media comments on it. But if one crashes, everybody hears about it in the news. So I think one of the things that's very important to remember is that people throughout history have cooperated and worked together in many places and many times. One of my favorite quotes is by Helen Keller. She said that the world is undeniably filled with suffering, but we should never forget it's also filled with the overcoming of suffering. That there are a lot of people working. I mean, what we're hearing here are examples of a lot of people working together. So there are many horrors on the planet, and I think a lot of secular people tend to focus on this and then give the examples of why religion is not valid. The reality of it is most religious people are actually really attempting to live virtuous lives. And so if we look historically, just a few examples, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ attempted to create an environment of religious freedom. A recent historian has argued that looking at the geopolitical environment that the Prophet ﷺ was in, it's arguable that he had two main intentions in what he set out to do. One was to make the world free for religious practice, devotion, and the second was to make it free for trade, a mutual trade, what we call today fair trade, which in the Quran is called tijaratun an taradin, or tijaratan an taradin. And fair trade, what's interesting, Mecca is a central devotional place, but it's also a place of trade. People spend a great deal of time in the mosque, but they also spend a great deal of time in the marketplace. And in Mecca, and the Quran actually says, لِيَشْهَدُوا مَنَافِعَ لَهُمْ, that one of the purposes of the pilgrimage is also for commercial benefit. And so the fact that the Prophet was not only a prophet, but was also a merchant, and the thing about, unless you're in the business of war is the worst thing for business. And so to create environments where trade can thrive, and all of this, everything that we have, all of our clothes, our glasses, all of these things is based on trade. You know, this is all trade. Right. The fact that we're drinking the water from this, everything is trade. And so merchants are after people, giving people spiritual sustenance. The most beneficial people on the planet are merchants, are people that actually bring the goods to the world. And it's interesting that we call these things goods and services. Like the idea of serving. And one of the great flaws of Adam Smith was to make the argument that it was selfishness that drives the merchant, and this was a good thing. In all of our religious traditions, whether it's in the Hindu Bhakti Yoga, or in the Islamic tradition of innamal a'malu binniyat, or the Christian tradition of service, people made their occupations devotional. And this is one of the things that we've lost. So I think it's extremely important for us to recognize that the world works because of cooperation. We all arrived from various places on these airplanes because of incredible cooperation. I mean, the logistical cooperation that went into place just to get us physically to this space is stunning. And I think when we see that the people of the worldly matters can cooperate so incredibly, it's a tragedy that the people of other worldly matters often fail to cooperate in the same way. And one of the verses in the Quran is ta'awunu 'ala al-birri wa taqwa wa la ta'awunu 'ala al-ithmi wal 'udwan. To cooperate with one another in dutiful piety and in good deeds and good actions, and not in sinfulness and aggression. That verse was revealed to the Prophet about the pagan Meccans, like that you should be working in good things, not in aggressive things. And so historically, we have seen many examples of this. Interfaith dialogue, the Prophet ﷺ initiated interfaith dialogue. In Ibn Ishaq mentions that he used to go to the Midrash, the place where the Jewish rabbis in Medina studied, and he would talk to them and discuss about religion. We know that the Christians of Najran came to Medina, and the Prophet not only honored them, but he allowed them to pray in his mosque, to the consternation of some of the Muslims who were surprised by that. So we also have amazing times in both the Muslim and in other places where there was immense cooperation. One of the greatest sages of Judaism is Musha bin Mamun, or Maimonides. Maimonides wrote many of his works in Arabic, that he was friends with Averroes, that they were in a circle. I read a beautiful story in one of Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi's, his Rihla, where he went and he met rabbis in Jerusalem. He was from Andalusia, where there was a Jewish population, but he went to Jerusalem and had discussions with the rabbis. Fakhruddin al-Razi talks about discussing with Christians and with, so the interfaith dialogue is one thing, but we're at a stage, I believe, where we have to really focus on interfaith action, because I think words are extremely important, and I'm very committed to words, and words move worlds.
Right.
And all of our revelations are words. So we should never forget the power of words and the importance of people. But I think it's extremely important for us at this stage to bracket the idea of proselytizing to others. I think it's a very dangerous thing in the current context. Until we can, to get things settled down, we can think about things like that later. The three great proselytizing faiths in human history are Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam. And the impulse to want to share with others the truth that you have is undeniably a very powerful and important one. The Jewish tradition recognizes the Noahidic people. The idea that Christians and Muslims, according to the Jewish tradition, are saved within the Noahidic practices. So spreading monotheism is important for the Jewish tradition, but not necessarily the idea of having other people enter into that covenant and having to practice the 613 as opposed to 7 laws. It's much easier to not be a Jew in Judaism than to be a Jew, but to be a Noahide. So I think that's very important to bracket that and to really focus on that. The other thing, the Quran has some very interesting verses that I think we should really think about deeply. Things like لِكُلٍّ وِجْهَةٌ وَمُوَلِّيهَا فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. Everybody has their own inner directedness, so vie in virtue with each other. Another verse in Al-Ma'idah tells us that لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شَرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. We gave each of you a way and a path. Minhag in Hebrew, it's the same term that's used in Hebrew. And then it says, and had God wanted, right? لَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. Had He wanted, He would have made you all one religion, right? وَلَكِنْ لِيَبْلُوكُمْ فِيمَا أَتَاكُمْ. But to test you in what He has given you. And then He says, فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. Vie in virtue. And I think this is an extremely important message from the Quran to all of us.
Yeah, so this is a clear command, basically, from the Quranic textual references that to collaborate for the common good.
In virtue.
Regardless of any kind of religious affiliation, to collaborate with whoever that advancing common good.
Right.
Very good. So it's it's a good transition to go to Yenna Wahid here. Yenna, you know, we know the dedication of your father. May God be mercy on him. And we also know your own dedication and commitment as a woman of faith within the largest, you know, Islamic organization, I would say in the world, like one Nahdlatul Ulama in Indonesia, like 60 million members? 80 now. So I need to update my data here. So 80 million members from Nahdlatul Ulama, famous in Indonesia. So the Wahid Institute engage in interreligious dialogue and advance that. So if you can tell us practical, basically examples of how you advance virtue, as Sheikh Hamza mentioning earlier.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanusi. But first of all, let me express my utmost gratitude to Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayyah for his very important works, and also helped by you also, Dr. Yusuf, that really helps us in our works, especially in the grassroots. And second of all, I also like to thank all the audience who stick by us now, you know, and even though lunch is calling, I promise you that lunch will taste so much better because of your patience. Yes, so the Wahid Foundation, it actually works with the grassroots of Nahdlatul Ulama. And we help try to facilitate dialogues between Muslims and non-Muslims in Indonesia and also regionally. We foster young thinkers as well as try to inspire opinion makers in the society and also policy makers in our society to help to create better policies that would then help to create a better conducive elements for more tolerance in the society. But our work actually starts with, of course, with the Nahdlatul Ulama, like you mentioned, and Dr. Salam mentioned earlier about the case that he encountered in East Java. Did you say, or Central Java? It's in Central Java, in which people from various religious backgrounds work together, and this is not uncommon in our country. In fact, we lost one of our youth members back in the year 2000, who lost his life guarding a church from a bomb attack. So, because Dr. Salah mentioned before, but also bomb attack. So that's the extent of tradition of tolerance that we have within our society and within our organization. So to answer your questions about the applications, especially from the theoretical level to bring it to on the application level, this need for creating dialogues in the society, then we tried to create a program which is called a Peace Village Initiative. Actually, it came from our research. From our research, we found that some of the factors that lead to radicalisms are not necessarily what people used to think. You know, some people still believe that level of education and level of income actually contributes to radicalism. But according to our research, it's not so. A sense of grievance, a sense of despair, it actually has the potential to lead people to radicalism, as well as exposure to materials that contain hateful messages, especially when it's based on religious teachings. So based on this, we thought we cannot stop a flow of information. This is an age in which information flows freely. So what do? We need to build resilience in the community. That's what we need to do, so that when they get all sorts of information, then they will be able to still stick to what the true teachings tell them to do, which is to extend peace, to extend kindness to others. So a Peace Village initiative is an initiative which targets community on the village level, building peaceful attitudes, one village at a time, especially targeting women. So there are three pillars, three components of the initiative. One is women empowerment. Second, it is the economic development through economic empowerment. And the third one is peace-building mechanism. So combining these three, trying to build a cohesiveness in the community, and in the end, we try to build a more cohesive society. So that's the initiative.
Wonderful, thank you. Sheikh Hamza, yes, you can add, and also I wanna, you also, you know, beautiful examples, historical perspective, but what are the challenges that we face as we move forward to build such an operational for the Alliance?
I just want to give one example of, I think, an extraordinary, that is on the panel. The Lutheran Church, which is an organized church in the United States, they had an extraordinary piece of property in Berkeley. It was a Lutheran college. Yeah. And the developers, because the Bay Area is landlocked, so you can't build there anymore. The developers were literally drooling over this property. And the Lutherans could have sold it for a much higher price. And they had 3 cash bids, and 2 of them were over our bid. But they chose to sell it to the Muslim college because the endowment was originally for God. And so they felt that it was more appropriate to sell it to one of the Abrahamic traditions that would honor that. So they actually, instead of being greedy and doing the unchristian thing, they actually did something, I think, that was deeply rooted in their tradition. Yeah. And so now we have the property. And as a way of honoring it, they had this huge cross there. When we took it down, we called them and we called others to see if they wanted the cross. We didn't want to desecrate it. And they actually sent a group up and did a ceremony to desacralize the cross so that we could remove it. So I think these are examples of just showing respect for another tradition. Right. And I think the Holy Hill is a good example of that. We call it the Holy Hill. I told the Muslims that when we move there, we don't want to be holier than thou, but make it a little holier than it is. And so that's an interfaith community in UC Berkeley. And I think the greatest obstacle that we have is ignorance. Because when we have people that are educated within their traditions, they tend to have an open-mindedness and a tolerance or respect that differs from when you have ignorance. And I mentioned the other day that in Arabic, the word for ignorance is opposite knowledge, but it's also opposite of fanaticism. So the jahil is ignorant, but it also means a zealous, fanatical person, somebody who reacts aggressively. And so we have to be really committed to, I think, religious literacy, and my undergraduate degree was in religious studies, so I studied all the world's religions, but I truly believe that religious literacy is extremely important in our time, that we have to educate people about this. And then the other thing is Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya constantly reminds us, and I've heard him say this many times, that the Quran, he says, karamatul insan fi kitabillah tasbiqu karamatul mu'min. That the human dignity precedes faith dignity. And we have in our tradition, in the Islamic tradition, you have an ontological dignity that every human being has, irrespective of where they come from. And then there's an acquired dignity through virtuous actions and through things. But recognizing the imago Dei, that every human being is a creation of God and has that right to be respected as something. The beautiful word in Arabic for respect, ihtiram, it comes from hurma, which is sanctity. So respect in Arabic, يحترم is from a wazn ifta'ala for people that know some Arabic. You know, it's a reflexive verb. It means to internalize the sanctity of the other. So that's literally what respect means. إذا أحترمك أرى حرمة الله فيك. I see the hurma of God in you. أحترمك. And a sanctuary is a haram. It's a place where it's inviolable, and the self is inviolable. So I think restoring the inviolability of the human being, of the self, is extremely important, especially in an age where blood flows so freely in too many places. On the other hand, it's important to be reminded, and I recently read a book by a United Nations physician called Factfulness, and it's a very interesting anecdote, because he makes a very powerful argument that in many ways we're living in one of the best times in human history. And so I think we have to also project a positivity. If we're always focusing on the negativity, then we really do a grave disservice, because people need consolation. It's one in the Catholic Church, it's a gift of the Holy Spirit. You know, the gift of consolation, of being able to console others, because the world is filled with immense pain. And religion's most powerful, the most powerful thing that religion has is the ability to numb the pain of the suffering of this world. And if religion doesn't do that, opium, physical opium, will do it.
Thank you so much. Professor Sellers, you know, we can do all of this, but I really want to talk about the involvement of young people, youth. For this alliance to be operational, we have to engage young people. I understand that the American Baptist churches started a dialogue between young youth, basically, from the Baptist communities and the Muslim communities. You wanna just briefly tell us about that?
I think you're exactly correct, Mohammed, that we have to engage young people across our traditions. That the future of this movement rests in the hands of the young. If you look around this room, most of us are not young. And we want to be able to attract young people to the cause that we believe in so much. At the Parliament, for the first time in Toronto, we had a family festival. We had a whole stream of programming for children and young teenagers who had come with their parents to the Parliament. And there were sessions and workshops and breakout sessions presented by people who are creating interfaith materials, curriculum materials for elementary school and middle school and the like. And so there is a recognition that as in so many important areas of life, we have to teach our children and our grandchildren that it is important to trust and respect and befriend people who are different than ourselves. Years ago, there was a Broadway show that became a movie called South Pacific. And in this play and movie, there was a song that has stuck with me over the years, and I want to quote the lyrics of the song. It might be difficult to interpret, but if you understand my English, you'll get the meaning. The song goes like this: you have to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You have to be carefully taught. You have to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is a different shade. You have to be carefully taught. Now, that song appeared in the movie and in the play because a young man from Arkansas in the United States had fallen in love with a young woman from a Pacific island, and he was worried how his relatives would accept the love that he had felt for this woman. And he said, this is what it is like in Arkansas in the 1940s, and sadly, for a lot of people in the U.S., it's still the case, that we teach our young people to hate and be afraid of and to be suspicious of people who are different, whose eyes are oddly shaped or whose skin is a different shade, who speak another language, who pray in a different way than we do. But I am convinced that we have to teach them before it is too late, while they are 6 or 7 or 8, to trust people who are different, to befriend people who are different, to love people who are different, to be neighbors with people who are different. This is the future of our world. This is the future of peace. And we have to go back to where we live and work and think of ways that we can instruct and teach and train our children, our young people, to believe in interfaith.
Education is the key, and all of us, we have to be taught.
Yeah.
I wanna get to you, Catherine, and I'm gonna basically ask Catherine a question, but I want you to prepare, to be prepared also to ask question as well. So, Catherine, yes, how we can involve youth? I need like a practical, kind of examples, ideas, because we talk about it all the time, but we need to have a clear roadmap to involve youth.
I think it's really an excellent question, and we ask it, as you just said, all of the time, and yet I think that the answer, at least the beginning of the answer, is really quite simple. And it has to do not just with inviting youth in to an agenda, but inviting youth to participate in the development of the agenda.
Okay. To cook the meal, basically.
To cook the meal, yes.
I see.
And we have experienced in multiple ways through the initiatives I described earlier that youth are already, as has been said even this morning, they are already doing this work. They are already leading the way. And sometimes we simply need to learn from their example, to get out of the way and perhaps even sometimes follow them. I think that there are examples any of our communities could lift up of youth and young adults who have taken seriously the call for a new alliance of virtue, who have enacted it and embodied it, who have stood for the expansiveness of the call that we share, who have lifted up models of equity, the inclusion of women as participants and leaders, not only because they're key to building inclusive societies, but because they're also key to the religious formation of youth and young adults. All of those layers, the connectional work that we can do across organizations rather than building a new wheel every time we want to engage. I think the youth are teaching us a lot about that, and so it is about inviting youth who are already engaged in the work to participate in the formation of the agenda.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I want to get questions from the audience, and I have the first hand here. Can we give the mic? Do you have a mic around? We got a few questions we can get from the audience. Yes, Mahjoub, we have a question here, and then we have a question there as well. That's good. I'm very happy to take the first two questions from women. So that's good. Yes, yeah, there.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أود أن أبدأ أولا بشكر شيخنا وقدوتنا الشيخ عبد الله بن أبي على إجراء هذه الملتقيات المفيدة جدا للمجتمعات المسلمة وللمجتمعات غير المسلمة، مهمة للإنسانية جمعاء. بالنسبة لحزب الفضول أريد أن أنبه إلى أن رغم أن الحزب أو المفاهيم أو المقصود من المفاهيم هذه مفاهيم كانت خارجة قبل الإسلام، إلا أن الإسلام استطاع أن يطبق هذه المفاهيم في مدى تاريخه النير. فنأخذ مثلا عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه. عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه لم يرد أن يصلي في كنيسة القيامة، بل صلى خارجها خوف أن تهدم كنيسة القيامة. عمر بن الخطاب أيضا رضي الله عنه أعطى قيمة كبيرة جدا لحقوق الإنسان بمفهومها المعاصر، وليست قضية القبطي الذي تشاجر مع ابن الوالي والي مصر عمر بن العاص بعيد عنا، لا يمكن أن أطيل هنا وأشرح الحيثيات جميعا، ولكنه انتقم لقبطي بسيط من ابن الوالي وأمر ابن الوالي أن يضرب هذا القبطي. فهذه كانت قمة في الوقت الحالي لا يمكن تطبيقها بمفهومها الحقيقي. أيضا هو أعطى قيمة للمرأة، لأنه عندنا مقولة معروفة: أخطأ عمر وصدقت امرأة، لأنها ناقشته في حقوقها، ناقشته في حقوق المرأة فاعترف بخطئه وبصدقها. إذن استطاع الإسلام في عصوره النيرة أن يطبق مفاهيم حلف الفضول وأن يصل إلى المكنون من هذه المفاهيم، وهو العدل والقيم والمحافظة على القيم.
هل هنالك سؤال؟
ولكن هل
هنالك سؤال بعينه؟
نعم هناك سؤال معين.
نعم.
السؤال الآن هو أنه رجال الدين بشكل عام يظلمون المرأة
بشكل عام؟
نعم بشكل عام، يعني اسمح لي وليسمح لي رجال الدين، لأنهم دائما يضعونها في الخلف. وما أفهمه شخصيا أو ما أعرفه شخصيا هو أن رجال الدين في الإسلام في مراحل متقدمة، المراحل بعد العصر النير للإسلام، تخلوا عن رسالتهم، تخلوا عن حقوق الإنسان بشكل عام، وأضاعوا الأمانة إلى حد معين، حتى أصبحنا أمة متهمة بالتطرف. ونحن معروفون نحن رسالتنا رسالة راحمة، رسالتنا تأمر بالرحمة، وأصبحنا أيضا أمة مدانة بالتحيز ضد المرأة.
شكرا جزيلا.
وديننا أول من أوصى على حقوق المرأة.
شكرا لك، يعني الرسالة واضحة والسؤال واضح جدا. نعم إن شاء الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين. أولا أشكر الشيخ عبد الله بن بية على هذا الملتقى الرائع جدا، وهو خامس ملتقى، ولاحظت أن هذه الملتقيات منذ 2014 إلى 2018 يربطها خيط ناظم. هذا الخيط بدأ بمفهوم السلم، ثم كيف نقوم بالسلم، ثم الدولة الوطنية، والخوف من الإسلاموفوبيا الذي نعاني منه نحن اليوم في العالم. واليوم نقف عند حلف الفضول ودور حلف الفضول في السلم، وهذا عمل أذكره فأشكره لأنه
شكرا.
عمل على لا اتركني أتكلم. أنا جيت من تونس وأنا أستاذ تعليم عالي وأدرس علوم الإسلام، ولي كتاب في الاختلاف وأدب الاختلاف في الثقافة الإسلامية، ولي كتاب في الأنسنة والحوار والتعايش في الإسلام منذ 2008 يوم كان الكلام في هذا الموضوع ممنوع. وبالتالي اسمحوا لي فإني هنا وجدت نفسي وسعدت كثيرا كوني موجودة بين هؤلاء العلماء العظام. كما أشكر الشيخ عبد الله بن بية على قضية مراجعة التراث، لأن هناك انحراف عما جاء به الإسلام في حقوق المرأة وبين ما قاله بعض الفقهاء وبعض الشيوخ، لا نعمم دائما. ونحن نريد هنا أن يساندنا علماء الدين، أقول علماء الدين وأقول عالمات الدين، وأقترح في هذه الجلسة أن يكون، لأن موضوع الشباب كذلك أعجبني كثيرا، أن يكون هناك ملتقى يدعى فيه الشباب للمحاضرة ليحاضروا في هذا الموضوع. وتدعى فيه النساء، ما هو دور النساء في نشر السلم، لأن المرأة في المفاوضات في النزاعات المسلحة، وتعرفوا القرار 1325 وغيره من القرارات غير مفعلة، فإنهم عندما تكون المرأة ستدخل في المفاوضات في النزاعات المسلحة وهي التي تفقد الزوج وتفقد الابن الابن وتغادر تهجر من بيتها وتتعرض للاغتصاب وتتعرض للحمل غير الشرعي، ومع ذلك يقولون لها ماذا ستفعلين مع دواعش أو ماذا، ولا يقولون ذلك للرجل. إذن هنا كذلك دور المرأة، أقترح في هذا المجال عن دور المرأة في بناء السلم في الوطن الإسلامي وفي غيره من الأوطان.
شكرا لك.
سؤالي للمحاضرين ولك أنت سيد الرئيس، ما هي المنهجية التي يمكن أن نوعي بها الشباب في السلم. وأنا في الجامعة عنا الحق احنا كل سنتين تدرس مادة، اخترت مادة الاختلاف وأدب الاختلاف أدرسها لطلبة المرحلة الثالثة، وأسندنا رسائل في هذا المجال وفي مجال السلم الاجتماعي والتماسك الأسري.
السؤال واضح
العفو.
جدا.
شكرا.
سؤال واضح جدا، وأشكرك يعني على هذا السؤال. أنا أسماء كفتارو، بس سؤال مباشرة لو تكرمتي حتى نأخذ أكبر عدد من الأسئلة.
طبعا الدكتورة منجية صادرت كل ما كنت أريد أن أتحدث
طيب
عنه،
شكرا لك.
ولكن أريد أن أضيف إلى ما تكلم به سماحة الشيخ حمزة يوسف. نحن نعلم أن الإرادة الطيبة لسماحة الشيخ العلامة عبد الله بن بية في نفض التراب عن الموروث بشكل إيجابي هو ما سوف يجعل الإسلاموفوبيا بعيدا كل البعد عن الإسلام والمسلمين. أنا أرى أن يعني كانت اليوم نحن نحاول أن نبحث عن آليات لبناء مواطنة شاملة وسلم مجتمعي من خلال حلف الفضول، وأظن أن حلف الفضول رافعاً إيجابياً حقيقياً لبناء المواطنة. ولكن أعيد وأؤكد على ما تكلمت به زميلتي قبلي على أن اليوم إذا أردنا المواطنة الشاملة ولم نتحدث عن النساء وحقوق النساء فإن كل عملنا يعني ناقص فعلا. نحن دعونا نستذكر اليوم تتكلمون عن التجارب، تتكلمون عن القصص، ولكن دعوني أقول عندما دخلت أسماء بنت عميس إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعد عودتها من الحبشة، ماذا قالت لنساء النبي؟ ماذا أتى بنا نحن النساء من السماء؟ فقالت لم يأتي، فدخلت إلى النبي ثائرة قالت ما لي أرى وحيك يأتي للرجال دون النساء. فأتت أنا أرى أن الآية التي تتكلم عن المساواة المطلقة، إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات إلى نهاية الآية في سورة الأحزاب، أنا أقول أرفض أن يقال الشباب دون الشابات، أرفض أن يقال القيادات الدينية الرجالية دون القيادات الدينية النسائية. نحن نريد هذه الروح من التساوي تحت لواء حلف يحقق للجميع مواطنة شاملة في الوطن العربي والإسلامي.
شكرا جزيلا دكتورة أسماء، واضح جدا.
أنا لست دكتورة، أعيد وأكرر.
طيب أسماء كفتارو، شكرا.
هذا أجمل.
طيب نحن نعود يعني I'm gonna get back here to the panel and then if we have time we're gonna take more questions. But let me begin with you, Yenna Wahid. I really want you to address some of these questions that from the audience. There are a number of questions, the involvement of women, supporting the youth, and also the scholarship and extremism and all of that.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sanusi, and I just want to praise you first for only allowing women to ask the questions. That was very brave, but I didn't see the men protesting, so it's also good. Yes. First of all, I think I share the sentiments of my sisters here that involving women is a must. You know, it's not even
an option.
It's not even it's unquestionable. Yeah. You need to involve women in all of activities in all walks of life in trying to create impact. If you don't include women, then how are you going to create a meaningful impact? I mean, that's the first question. And second one, involving youth is also a must because youth is in a vulnerable position to be radicalized because of the nature of youth itself. You know, young people in certain junctures in their lives, they face frustrations. They want to assert their identity. They want to feel meaningful about themselves. So when they then get persuaded by the wrong, radical groups, then you've got a problem. And young people in the world, they face the same frustrations, regardless of their religious backgrounds. I mean, whether they're religious, or even whether they're religious or whether they're secular. Secular kids, for example, secular youth, when they're frustrated, they might go to drugs. They might go to petty criminals. But religious people, when they are then being enticed by the religious rhetorics, then this is a very dangerous situation because then they might want to join ISIS or they might want to create problems in their own communities. So you need to engage them. But how do you engage them? The way to engage them is to speak their language. We cannot patronize them. We cannot have a monologue. That's one of the problems that we have, is that we tend to have a monologue with them. But you need to have a dialogue. But sometimes parents, we as parents, we are very adverse to being criticized by our kids. But it's a must. Allow them a space, a safe space where they can explore their thoughts, where they can explore their intention to assert their identities. And also flood them with messages that promote peace. And I think this is really important, because we've got people, especially now with social media, we've got all these, ulamas that promote actually radical notions, and the kids, and in such a sensationalist way that the kids tend to follow that, because it's easy, it's a black and white approach. You've got a problem, the problem is caused by the infidels or something like that, and then, the way to fight it is to wage a jihad against them. That's a very black and white, simplistic perspective. So we need to we need to build critical thinking in our youth to make sure that whatever information they get, then they can create a synthesis of all these informations, and then still be on the right path.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Sheikh Hamza, we're going to conclude. This is going to be the last round. Yeah, we'll get to you. Yes.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أولا أشكر الأخوات اللواتي قدمنا هذه الملاحظات والأسئلة المهمة. أسماء بنت عميس، المهم أنها هي التي ذهبت وطلبت، وأنا الذي استفدت من هذا أن بعد هذا كل الآيات وردت بالذكر والأنثى، أما قبلها بالذكور مع المفهوم أن يشمل الذكر والأنثى، لكن على كل حال أنا الذي استفدت منه أن هي لا بد أن تطالب، لا بد أن هي تتقدم وتطلب حقها. الشيء الثاني أن حينما أسمع عن التعذيب وعن أمثال داعش وما يحدث في كثير من البلدان الآن، السؤال الذي يأتيني: من ربت هؤلاء؟ الأمة المدرسة، إذا عددت شعبا طيب عراقي، الأم عليها أن تربي الأولاد بالشفقة وبتعاطف على الإنسان وعلى البشر. فنحن عندنا نقصان كبير في العالم الإسلامي في تربية النساء، والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ركز على تربية النساء. So it's extremely important that we educate both our men and our women, our youth. Like you said before, the famous Catholic statements of Ignatius Loyola: if we get them before 7, we'll have them on our deathbed. So it's very important to get children early enculturated into a culture of compassion, a culture of care for the other. Empathy is a major problem. And empathy, ta'atuf. The Quran, the Prophet ﷺ talked about the believers have mutual empathy, and they don't just have empathy for one another, they have empathy for not just their own group, religious group, but for creation. We know we have, in Muslim history, we have countless endowments that were for animals, for the care of animals. One of the tragedies in many parts of the Muslim world is the abuse of animals. The children actually abuse animals, which is a very dangerous sign. The Prophet ﷺ had a house filled with animals. It's very important to nurture children with a respect and a love for animals, because every prophet was a shepherd. And the reason our scholars say that is because they learned to care for the weakest of creatures. And so moving up from that is very important. So I totally agree. In terms of the minhaj, we have to reassess our Islamic tradition. It's very important to remember that empire adopted the religion of Islam. empire used Islam for its own pursuits. We have to get back to what the original intentions of our Prophet ﷺ. Our Prophet was not a warmonger. He was not belligerent. In Sahih al-Bukhari, he said, لا تتمنوا لقاء العدو وسأل الله العافية. Do never desire to meet an enemy, but ask Allah for peace, for well-being. That he was a man of peace. If ever he had an opportunity to reduce a violent situation, he took that opportunity. And this is why out of 29 ghazwa, there was only fighting in 11, because he would always go for the peaceful option. If we don't teach our youth that our religion is a religion that calls for peace, Allah yad'u ila dar as-salam. God is calling to the abode of peace, not to the abode of war. كُلُّمَا أَوْقَدَ نَارًا لِلْحَرْبِ أَطْفَأَهَا اللَّهُ. Every time they attempted to create war situations, God put that out. And so sakina is, in the Quran, in Surah Al-Fath, when Allah juxtaposes the jahli impulse, hamiyat al-jahiliya, of war, Allah says, Anzara ala al-mu'min, Anzara sakina. He caused the sakina to come down on the believers. That we have too much aggression right now. And there are many reasons for it, but if we don't teach people the virtues of patience, the virtues of moving toward, anyway. Yeah.
And to address all of that, it's important to address all of that. We have to adopt inclusivity. We have to be inclusive. No one left behind. Yeah. And I'm really delighted.
Dr. Sanusi, can I just add just a little bit about the women
please,
thing?
yeah.
Right, because
30 seconds, right?
20 seconds, yes. Okay, yes, women need to step forward, but we need also men to facilitate when we're stepping forward, because whether we like it or not, men still hold the key to many rooms. And without them facilitating for women when they are stepping forward, there's no way that women are going to be on stage. So I really appreciate the organizer of this conference for having women on stage. This is something that is not very common in many traditional religious backgrounds. So really appreciate it.
We're very happy to have, of course. Bob, Robert, yes.
I'd like to respond to just something you asked earlier about challenges that we face.
Yes.
And I think one of the challenges that we face in all of our religious traditions is that there are very good people who are serious about their faith, whichever one it is, but who do not think that there's anything important about interfaith activity. They don't see the purpose, or they don't think it's a priority, or they don't understand how crucially valuable it is. And so I think we need to be able to address that as a challenge, because we need those good people to begin to believe that interfaith is important, and that maybe that the future of our living successfully as neighbors in the future depends upon all of us accepting that it's important to accept those who are different and believe differently and pray differently, and that we can live side by side as neighbors and cooperate in good work. So that's good to have a bunch of people who are progressive and on the progressive edge of our traditions believing this, but there's a whole mainstream, I think, within Christianity, I know for sure, and I assume in Islam and Judaism as well, of good people who just don't understand this is important. And that's a challenge for us.
Yes,
to
thank
try
you so
to
much.
tell them
This is great. Catherine, 30 seconds, 1 minute.
I'd like to close by simply highlighting what we've heard all of the panelists mention, which is bold action as a means for disseminating and embodying the shared values we have in this alliance of virtue. And I think we do that best when we embody the narrative. So my husband is a graduate of the seminary that sold the property to Zaytuna, and I can tell my children that story. Not only about the loss and the sadness we feel for that seminary no longer existing there, but our joy that our brothers and sisters in the faith who share values with us are now able to carry forward the task of theology which we hold so dear. So I think if we can embody those narratives and engage in bold collective action, that's a key to our future together.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Really, I want to conclude by 3 points. One is that I'm really happy that inclusivity is mentioned. I want to encourage you to look into 1325. 1325, the UN resolution. Number two, youth discussion was a key for us. Again, I want you to look into 2250. 2250 is the UN resolution also supporting engagement of youth. And finally, I just wanted to say that to thank you. We kept you, this is a lunchtime, but I really appreciate your involvement and engagement here. And the role of women that we conclude the session with is very essential, and particularly the role of the mother. Thank you so much. Let's join to thank our panel.
Thank you, Dr. Sanusi, and thank you to all of our panelists this morning. We're now going to have a lunch break. After lunch at 1:30, we will be resuming with our first two workshops this afternoon. The first workshop on covenants, treaties, and the nation-state and Muslims in the global order will be in room A. The second workshop on religious pluralism and examples of national integration practices in room B, and there will be signs to those out on the balcony. Thank you.